subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Power, poised to unleash nothing but destruction when released. The sun emitted a scorching and inconceivable brightness, melting the blood ocean of Mother Goddess of Depravity. As it entered the state of supernova, the white sun entirely imploded. Boom! As it surged out of the sun, a sea of light almost filled the entire depraved planet. Everything was entirely annihilated as the light engulfed in it, whether it was an ocean of blood, reality, space, or knowledge. Nothing was spared. Aucuses emerged at the last moment before Lilith and Artisan, who were both absolutely unable to bear the authority that the Mother Goddess of Depravity exerted when she appeared. Artisan was kneeling on the ground, his face twisted in pain as he held his head. Various fissures appeared in his body, revealing mechanical parts rather than blood and flesh. Yet crimson blood began to flow out of his mechanical parts, and flesh began to appear on it as well. Lilith was in even worse shape, as her white gown was saturated in blood and scarlet blood poured from her eyes, ears, and mouth. She let out inhumane screams from her throat, as if she was in unimaginable pain. Despite the fact that Lilith was a god, she was the one who suffered the most because her path and power came from the Mother Goddess of Depravity. Despite their dreadful situation, Aucuses gazed at them, their lives still within grasp of saving. Lilith had not yet been corrupted, as the Mother Goddess of Depravity focused her attention entirely on him, after arriving, only sparing her a glance. One could argue that his existence saved Lilith from certain death. Boom! He punched the crimson ground in front of him without hesitation, his right fist coated in golden flames, for he realized the scorching light of supernova was not far away from them, annihilating and devouring everything in this depraved world, despite the fact that nothing would happen to him. But cannot be said the same for Lilith and Artisan in their current condition. With the appearance of the Mother Goddess of Depravity, Aucuses noted that the reality created by Spherote extended considerably, which included not just this planet. Contrarily, the ground before him disintegrated, revealing infinite space with gleaming stars beneath. Aucuses carried Lilith in both hands, and Artisan floated behind him, teleported near the shattered ground he had formed immediately. He needed to escape from this collapsing planet and away from Mother Goddess of Depravity, because Lilith's condition didn't allow her from being near Mother Goddess of Depravity. She will undoubtedly be corrupted right away. Also, Mother Goddess of Depravity's power that reached across the barrier was far below her true might, despite being tremendous for even gods to face, because the barrier was still intact, even though slightly weakened. Even a supernova would have no effect on her if he was facing her true body. As he held Lilith, Aucuses finally turned to face the collapsing world. Then he began to fall back into the broken ground, and Artisan, who had been floating beside him, plummeted with him. Everything in Aucus's vision slowed down, as if time itself had decelerated, while he gazed at a white ball of light in the sky, spewing a scorching glare that disintegrated everything it touched. As he fell behind, Aucus's lips twisted into a maniacal smile. His face was completely pale, and his arms that held Lilith trembled. Even if everything appeared to be working in his favor, doing this was far from straightforward, as Aucus's was entirely concentrated and developed endless plans in his thoughts within a second of fully analyzing the situation and executing it. He was careful not to make a single error, as this could lead to his imminent death. He also used almost all of his powers and didn't hold back at all. Aucus's heart was racing as he realized how crazy this world and his life had become. Despite being a god above all, he felt entirely helpless in the position he had found himself in, which he believed to be dangerous but not fatal like this. He laughed maniacally, releasing all of his feelings. As he fell, however, something extended out of the light from the corner of his slowed vision. A bloody tentacle approached him, as if it wanted to claim his life. As he realized this, Aucus's smile didn't fade. He also did not show any panic. "Fuck you, bitch," He didn't hesitate to curse the pillar herself. Before the bloody tentacle could reach him, he finally fell through the broken ground into vast starry space below. With his departure, the depraved world also completely collapsed in his supernova. However, distorted roars filled with rage and madness could still be heard echoing. Chapter 21. Sun and Moon. There was a blue star amid the vast starry space created by Spherot, with many planets orbiting around it. The very space on one of the planets that was covered in snow and ice tore apart like paper. A white-haired man with a blood-stained dress walked out of it, holding a woman in both hands, and a brown-haired man floated alongside him. Aucuses knelt in the snow, crystal snow falling on his face, icy touch on his hands, chilly wind blowing on his figure. Everything felt so real. Then, Aucuses looked up at the blue star, while taking a few deep breaths to calm himself down, since his mental and physical state was worsening. But the situation, however, did not allow him to relax and adjust. He put Lilith and Artisan on the snowy ground around him. He placed his hands on both of their foreheads without hesitation after seeing their anguished expressions. When he touched the crimson blood that was on their foreheads, though, he flinched slightly. The crimson blood felt like a magma that had burst out of the Earth's core, burning his hands, as if wanting to prevent him from healing them. For a brief moment, Aucuses felt a little silly. As a god of the sun, he had been scorched, and if word got out, his built reputation would crumble. In this situation, what the fuck am I thinking? Aucuses cursed himself while also realizing his own bad mental state. It has to be because of that bitch. Despite his fluctuating emotions and conflicting thoughts, he pressed on their foreheads, ignoring the scorching blood. The contact produced a flash of golden light that beamed on both Artisan and Lilith's figures. Under the radiance of golden light, the blood on Lilith's body evaporated, and the flesh on Artisan's mechanical inner part dissolved as well. They healed visible to the naked eye, as his countenance became paler. Lilith opened her eyes after what seemed like an eternity of excruciating anguish. The pain before began, as she rested her eyes on the inexplicable figure that had dawned on them, and the distorted murmurs echoed in her mind, affecting her soul. She was terrified because the murmurs were familiar to her. It was the one who tormented her during her time as an ancient god, nearly driving her insane. It was the one who compelled her to devise a scheme to save herself by faking her death. She later learned the source of the murmurs from ancient sun god, a pillar of cosmos, the origin of evil, mother goddess of depravity. At the moment, every fiber of her being screamed in terror, and her eyes shrank in fear as the indescribable being stared at her. She instinctively knew who it was and that it had come specifically for her. She also knew they had fallen into a well-planned trap. She tried to do anything, to flee, even to shout for help, but it was futile as she collapsed to the ground, her vision and throat filled with scarlet blood, as blood and cries were the only things that could come out of her mouth. Her entire life flashed before her eyes in that moment, as she felt hopeless. She knew what would happen to her next, and it was far worse than the death that so many feared. She was desperate to use her power. It was pointless, though, because her powers were entirely useless, as if something was preventing her from using it. Finally, she saw a blaze of light approaching her in her hazy vision, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. She even believed it was far better for the light to consume and evaporate her than to suffer and lose herself under it. However, she was lifted and held, and she remembered the warm hands around her, which helped to alleviate her anguish. She had a glimmer of hope in her heart at that time. Then, after what seemed like a lifetime, the golden light covered her vision, liberating her from the anguish and whispers. Lilith finally looked around, her attention finally falling on a figure who appeared to be trembling. Aucuses, Lilith exclaimed as she observed the state of Aucuses, which was rapidly deteriorating. She desperately stood up without caring for her state and ran to him, placing her hands on his back. Her authority of life acted on Aucuses as her hands began to glow green, pouring near-endless life force into him from her hands. Aucuses didn't refuse her help, as his state began to heal far more quickly than theirs under Lilith's influence. His pale face regained its vitality, and his dimmed golden iris began to glow again. "It's wonderful." Aukas's spoke softly as he felt the immense life force soaking into him, mending him physically and mentally, and restoring him to his peak state. He felt so comfortable, so much so that he didn't want it to end. "Did we escape?" Lilith asked, dread evident in her eyes as she observed his condition improving. "And what happened? It's a pity because I wanted to stay like this all day. But she will discover us soon." Aukas's murmured to himself. He said this while laying his finger on Lilith's forehead, and a light flashed into her forehead from his tip of his finger. Lilith didn't resist, and she soon saw all that had transpired in her thoughts, from the supernova to him saving her. But before she could say anything to thank him, Aukas's rose up and walked away from her, leaving her in loss. "We're running out of time, Umbella." Aukas's spoke gravely to her as he walked over to the artisan, who was dazed and had dull eyes. "My supernova won't be able to keep her for very long." The snowy ground began to shake as he spoke, as if to confirm his words. But while standing before Artisan, who literally had a look of doubting life, Aukas's ignored it. It's hard to blame Artisan because even he was caught off guard by the turn of events, let alone him. "Artisan," Aukas's called out, jolting the artisan out of his daze, and his eyes regained clarity. "What just happened?" Artisan asked, his voice quivering. "Listen, stop asking questions and do exactly what I say without a second thought. If you want us to make it," Aukas's stated, while Artisan continued to nod without hesitation, as if he, too, was aware of the gravity of the situation. "Take out your historical scroll and write down everything you can about the ruins we saw right away." Aukas's gave the order despite knowing full well that he would later regret it. But he didn't show much hesitation, though, given what was on the line. "It'll only take a few moments." As he removed a bronze scroll and pen from his coat, Artisan began to enter everything as per instruction of the sun god. "I can get that for you." Aukas's finally turned to face Lilith, who stood behind him. Her face had eased, and there was no longer any fear in her eyes, despite knowing what they are going to face. "Can we make it?" Lilith inquired, her voice surprisingly calm. "If we go all out together," Aukas's said lightly, as he and Lilith turned to face the sky, as they noticed something approaching this snowy planet. The planet's blue sky turned crimson almost instantly, as a terrifying beam of crimson light descended from the sky toward them. The crimson light beam, which seemed to be filled with infinite spiritual power and capable of tearing anything apart in existence, nearly covered the entire sky. Image here, Artisan trembled as he noticed this, his pen-holding fingers quivering, but he didn't dare to stop. Aukas's expression finally became serene, as he realized that if he wanted to survive the next fight, he would have to put everything on the line and even go beyond his limits. "She is not as strong as we believe she is," he finally said to Lilith, smiling, as a blazing light erupted from his hand, forming a spear of light. Aukas's aimed his light spear at the crimson beam that blanketed the entire sky and threw it. As it blazed across the sky, the spear of light grew larger and larger, almost reaching the size of a crimson beam, leaving a trail of light in its wake. As the light spear and the crimson beam collided, boom! On impact, a terrifying explosion occurred, ripping the very fabric of reality. Like a dazzling sun, the spear of light exploded into a mass of brilliant light. A crimson moon formed when the red beam of light collapsed into itself. The appearance of the sun and moon caused the entire snowy world to crumble and collapse, unable to withstand the celestial body's power. The first battle between gods and great old ones erupted, simultaneously, in the Solomon Empire. A handsome man with deep starry blue eyes and black hair stood near the window of a Gothic castle nestled alongside a mountain range, gazing at the blood moon that shone through the sky despite the darkness attempting to block it. "Bethel." In the room where that black-haired man stood, a voice came from nowhere. Bethel Abraham instantly turned to face the priest who had entered his home without permission. "I apologize, Adam. As if he knew what the priest was going to ask, Bethel spoke up. I am unable to help in this situation. Chapter 22. Door, I knew you'd say something like that. Adam spoke as he walked out of the Gothic-style room shadows, which were still illuminated by the blood light of the moon, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Bethel shook his head and spoke lightly. Adam, you make it sound so bad. It's not that I don't want to help. It's just that no matter how hard I tried, nothing would change. My door authority is far from enough. Adam approached Bethel, taking a moment to look around the room before speaking. There's a lot on the line now, Bethel. While looking out the window at the blood moon behind the Bethel, Adam said, much more than you can imagine. I believe I understand what's at stake, Adam, but cannot change the facts. Bethel stated sternly, my door authority will have no effect on the barrier, as I am a still king of angels, not a god. And the anchor that allowed the moon's power to bypass the barrier is also extremely powerful. As you can see, Ammonites, Leodoro, Herabergen, and even Solomon have already used their power to stop it. However, it has only reduced some of its power. How do you expect me to accomplish what you want? I know, but believe me, Adam stated, and simply exert your authority. It may give them more off a chance. Ouroboros, Adam called unexpectedly as he turned to look backwards. A man with long silver hair and white angelic wings appeared in the room, wearing white robes and holding a silver cross. Adam. Ouroboros' tone was apathetic as he nodded to greet Adam, but he just stared at Bethel with no intention of reciprocating. You came well prepared. As he saw this, Bethel said. Adam made no comment on this, but he did address an important issue. If your situation becomes critical, Ouroboros will use reboot to help you and let us escape. So you want me to believe you? Bethel finally asked, even though he stood before two kings of angels, his eyes unfalteringly calm. And visionary at that. You don't have much of choice. Adam's tone was calm, and Bethel couldn't figure out whether this was a threat or if he was simply stating facts given the circumstances. Bethel looked at Adam deeply for a moment before nodding and waving his hands in the air as the three of them vanished from his Gothic-style house in Solomon Empire. In the vast astral world, which was even more abstract than the spirit world, seemed to encompass all of the universe's authorities and symbolism. It had an invisible barrier that separated the earth from the rest of the cosmos. They appeared just before the barrier, as a ray of light illuminating the darkness surrounding them. A black-colored book immediately appeared in front of Bethel, and it opened, as the pages flipped on their own. It came to a halt in the page, which had symbol of closed door, and when Bethel tapped it, the door lit up with blue light and slowly emerged from the book and flew towards the barrier. And it merged with the invisible barrier right away. At the same time, Adam's aura grew vast and terrifying, briefly surpassing the level of King of Angels as he held a golden cross that was shining brightly in his hands. Indifference replaced his warm and calm expression. Urubus' silver eyes rippled as he stared at the Adam, as he couldn't believe the transformation. He almost had the feeling that he had faced his fallen lord for a fleeting moment. The door authority was effective on the barrier. Adam proclaimed solemnly in front of the barrier, as if speaking a prophecy, and then immediately various blue ripples appeared on the surface of the barrier. The barrier becoming visible in the astral world under the blue light that began to cover the barrier. As the enhanced seal separated the space inside the barrier and began severing the connection of the crimson moon with the anchor on the earth, the barrier began to strengthen under the door authority. On earth, the blood moon became visibly dim, as if it might vanish at any moment. Boom! But just then the barrier shook as something slammed into it, dimming the shimmering blue barrier. A massive, indescribable face clinged on the barrier, with various bloody tentacles. Countless eyes on its face peered out from behind the barrier at the three of them. Roar! A rage-filled roar erupted in the vast astral world, causing the barrier itself to tremble under its wrath. The mother goddess of depravity's countless eyes were filled with madness and anger as they gazed at Bethel. Bethel's figure began to tremble as mother goddess of depravity appeared, and blood began to dye his clothes. His blue eyes had begun to turn crimson. But Bethel's expression remained unchanged as he stood before the pillar of cosmos without fear or panic. "Can you maintain it?" Ouroboros asked, having noticed his condition. "Everything is fine. We managed to stop some of its influence, but it's still not enough. Despite the situation," Bethel said calmly, shaking his head towards Adam. On Earth, the brilliance of a blood moon that was beginning to fade, restored under the roar of Mother Goddess of Depravity. Adam nodded as his aura faded and became noticeably weaker than it had been. Even so, he didn't care and looked through the barrier at the Mother Goddess of Depravity. When a Mother Goddess of Depravity gazed at Adam, its rage increased all of a sudden, as evidenced by the reverberating roars in the astral world. When Adam realized this, his expression was still indifferent without slight change. Before, he didn't proclaim that the connection of cosmos is severed with the authority of Dor taking effect, because even he couldn't do something like that in his current state. It's now up to them. Adam's voice echoed out in the astral realm. "We did everything we could." The brilliance of a golden sun and crimson moon illuminated the vast starry space, causing the entire snowy planet to collapse completely, with the entire planet literally breaking into pieces soon. A handsome man appeared floating right before the vast sun. Despite the fact that the man was tiny in comparison to the golden sun, the divine aura emanating from him completely dwarfed the golden sun. He was dressed in silver armor that gleamed in the sun's rays. He was wielding a long white spear with golden streaks down it. The man wore no helmet visor, exposing his face with angular features and golden iris, which glowed and surged like a burning sun behind him. Aucasus raised a spear to the crimson moon and declared, his voice reverberating across the vast starry space. "I say it's ineffective." Chapter 23. Infinity. I declare it's ineffective. Aucasus declared, raising his spear to the crimson moon, his voice reverberating across the vast starry space. The crimson moon dimmed, and the moon's surface began to change as the blood sea that was flowing around the moon began to evaporate, turning the moon back to silver, like it was before in the past civilization. Under his declaration, the very authority that Mother Goddess of Depravity used to corrupt the moon was being removed. However, the crimson sea on the moon surged all of a sudden, as it began emitting crimson light, which quickly covered the entire moon, stopping the transformation, and the effect of his declaration was removed with it. Immediately after that, the crimson moon changed visibly, becoming illusory and ethereal before finally transforming into an indescribable being with countless bloody tentacles and eyes. Mother Goddess of Depravity. The mere appearance of the Mother Goddess of Depravity caused an ocean of blood to appear in space, completely corrupting the surrounding reality. This also prevented Aucasus from using order authority. Because reality is under her control, his law will have no effect. So, there was no other way than to make everything fall into chaos. "Son," at that precise moment, his deep voice could be heard. Now, directly in front of her, and in the blood ocean, countless miniature suns bloomed in brilliance, instantly illuminating this planetary system. The light of the countless miniature suns caused the ocean of blood to melt, unable to withstand the scorching heat any longer. Mother Goddess of Depravity just looked at the suns, causing some to instantly transform into crimson moons or simply dissolve in the blood ocean. Then Aucasus appeared before the blood ocean's edge and waved his spear into space. "Die in this ocean of light, bitch." He spoke with a grin, and immediately all of the remaining miniature suns turned white, emitting a scorching glare, just like the sun that had gone supernova before. Boom! Then they all imploded as the miniature sun's blazing light immediately engulfed the blood ocean and Mother Goddess of Depravity. The light then began to spread throughout the entire planetary system, obliterating everything in its path. Light consumed everything, including the blue star in the center, planets revolving around it, and asteroids, before annihilating it. From afar, one would see an ocean of light almost completely engulfing this planetary system in almost an instant. It was a sight to behold. An entire planetary system, no smaller than the solar system, faced extinction under the light of Aukas's. He was able to easily destroy this planetary system because it was not influenced by the authority of Mother Goddess of Depravity as opposed to the Blood World, which was a manifestation of her authority. So he went all out. As Aukas's stood in the ocean of light, painful roars echoed around him. But even hearing the roars didn't make him happy as he thought, because the powerful life force emanating from her only reduced just slightly. Is that why they call her the Indestructible? Aukas's also noticed that the Mother Goddess of Depravity's power was dwindling out of nowhere, as if something was attempting to interrupt her power coming from the astral world. He could guess that it was the other in the outside world, helping them, but still he didn't dare to underestimate her. He also did not allow Lilith to enter the battlefield until Artisan finished filling the historical scroll completely, as there is still a major risk for Lilith to enter the battlefield without any protection from the Mother Goddess of Depravity. Suddenly, the roars vanished, and with them, all of his senses screamed in danger. He didn't hesitate to turn to his left and raise his hand, and in an instant, a shield of pure light formed on his hands. Boom! A beam of light struck his shield just then, but it wasn't crimson, but rather completely pitch dark. When the dark beam hit him, it also instantly extinguished the very concept of light by dying and corrupting everything in the ocean of light around the planetary system. Aukas's was using all of his strength to keep the light shield in place while resisting the black beam of light, as his right hand trembling holding the shield. He also felt nothing but endless malice from the dark beam. The malice began to affect him, invoking evil thoughts in his mind and attempting to influence him in the battle. It made him shiver, for he even had some thoughts that this darkness is nothing other than the manifestation of pure evil. His golden iris glowed, and pure light erupted from his form, instantly dispelling the effects. Crack! Just then, his light shield resisting the dark beam began to break, seemingly unable to bear it anymore. Under in command of Mother Goddess of Depravity, the darkness in his surroundings moved closer to him in an attempt to corrupt him. Aukas's heartbeat slowed as he took a long breath. Then he dispelled the light shield instantly, without hesitation. In the endless darkness, Aukas's floated, his figure emitting pure light. As if sensing this, the filthy darkness moved in an attempt to extinguish this pure light, and above it all, a dark beam of light was heading towards him. Aukas's expression were unwaveringly calm as he floated in the middle of this, looking at the dark beam of light that was approaching him. He raised his right hand and crossed his middle and index fingers, forming a symbol. He intended to use a conceptual move he created based on the power of one of his favorite anime characters in his previous life. Infinity. As he used his authority of order, his calm voice reverberated in the endless darkness. One bright star after another appeared in the uncorrupted space around him. With the appearance of the stars, the very order of space began to change. The authority of order strengthened the space itself to be able to withstand corruption and destructive power. Then, under order authority, space began to expand infinitely, and the stars in the fabric of space stretched with it, extending like lines of light around Aukas's. When the dark beam and filthy darkness collided with the expanding space, they both came to a halt for a brief moment before being pulled away from Aukas's by infinitely expanding space. Chapter 24. Human Civilization Infinity. Endless. Boundless. Aukas's floated in the vast expanse of the space, with light streaks extending around him in the very fabric of space. For a brief moment, he felt space expand to become truly boundless. Even the Mother Goddess of Depravity appeared to be affected by the boundless space and vanished into the horizon. As he couldn't hear her distorted, angry roars any longer, which was a comfort to his ears. As the roars of the Mother Goddess of Depravity were nothing short of a conglomeration of all blasphemous sounds in the cosmos, they could literally drive anyone who heard them to commit suicide in order to get reprieve from the sound, at least in death. It really worked. Aukas's thought as he tightened his grip on his white spear, his gaze roving over the infinite space surrounding him. It has a much larger impact than I anticipated, He created that technique not long ago, but he never had the chance to test it before applying it directly here. He wasn't sure he'd succeed, so he was always planning another attack, just in case. Mother Goddess of Depravity. Aucuses considered her with a headache, as the situation was deteriorating into a battle of attrition. But he knew they'd lose if this went on, because they'd be no match for her in that scenario. This reality, Aucuses took a look at this recently formed reality. I need to completely destroy this reality. He couldn't think of any other solution because this was the only way to solve everything, rather than fighting a battle to see who manages to survive the longest. But saying something is one thing, actually doing it is quite another. The appearance of the Mother Goddess of Depravity reinforced the reality here. He felt before, the reality expanding at an incredible rate, massive enough to fit even different planetary systems, at that precise moment before she arrived ahead of them. He didn't know if this was her work or the power of Spherot, but it didn't matter anymore. Lilith. Aucuses' thoughts turned as he remembered Lilith's authority over life, which can create and take life, as well as the desolate, which can wither the very reality. Lilith and Artisan are in different space, with Artisan completing the historical scroll and Lilith protecting Artisan. They would not enter the battlefield until Artisan finished it completely. All the while, he is fighting Mother Goddess of Depravity to prevent her from reaching Lilith. What if we combined our authorities? Aucuses was devising various strategies to win the battle, also never letting his guard down and constantly scrutinizing his surroundings. For even his godly perception couldn't actually detect her. Even though his thoughts were numerous, so much so, it may appear that a long time had passed, but it had only been a few seconds. Boom! The lines of light in the space around him dimmed and faded, taking with them the authority of order that was acting on the space, which was also erased by another vast force that appeared. Aucuses tightened his grip on his spear as he realized this, and pure white light began to gather in the tip of the spear. Then it appeared. Holy crap, he was completely taken aback by the structure that was appearing in front of him. There is no limit to her? He saw something tearing the very fabric of reality and destroying the infinite space so easily before him. A swirling mass of darkness tore out of the space, extending out and occupying everything in this space within next moment. The darkness swirled as countless wails or screams of pain and terror echoed from within it. This structure had many layers, each of which housed abominations and souls of multiple races who were either tortured or wandered aimlessly. Various alien faces that looked nothing like human morphed on the edge of the swirling mass of darkness, but they all had one thing in common. They were screaming in pure terror and fear. Above all of this manifestation was her, with countless eyes filled with nothing but rage, as she stared at him, as if she couldn't wait to tear him apart. Aucuses stood in front of this structure, his figure dwarfed by its enormous size, which occupied almost the entire reality in his perception. A thought came to him out of nowhere as he gazed at it. He felt this was nothing but a manifestation of all that is ugly, chaotic, and, most importantly, evil in the infinite cosmos. Why does it resemble the infinite abyss? Aucuses noticed the resemblance. He wasn't talking about the abyss on Earth, but about another abyss in one of the famous games from his previous life. Is this her manifestation of authority of evil? The thoughts flashed in his mind before he completely focused on her. Now, even though Aucuses was facing something like this, he was just solemn and didn't show any panic in least. The pure light gathered on the tip became blazingly bright, literally holding the power to purify anything evil, gave him confidence. To be honest, his light authority is nemesis to her now. Roar. As the abyss moved, her furious roar resounded. The abyss then literally fell towards him, carrying the power to destroy and corrupt all in existence. Boom, boom. As it descended towards him, space and reality tore in its path. Light. Aucuses pointed his spear at the falling abyss and declared. A beam of pure light erupted from its spear tip, growing in size as it approached the descending abyss. Boom! The pure light beam collided with swirling filth darkness, shattering reality. The pure light evaporated some of the filthy darkness in the abyss, while the filthy darkness started corrupting the pure light and trying to turn it darkness. But soon, there was balance between both sides, as their authorities just kept colliding, with no side having an advantage over the other. It had become a classic situation, or more of a glitch, because it was now good versus evil and light versus darkness. Mother Goddess of Depravity was enraged when she saw her authority being challenged by a mere god of earth. Even though her current power is far from her true might, it still enraged her, as it was the first time she had faced a situation like this since the fall of the other two pillars. As he observed the stalemate, Arceus wanted to use some of his other authorities to break the deadlock. But just then a flash of green light appeared behind him, and a deep voice echoed through the space. Death! Immediately, a portion of the abyss trembled and became illusory before fading out of the very existence, giving the light beam an advantage as the entire abyss began to evaporate under the pure light. Arceus felt relieved when he noticed Lilith appearing near him, for this entire battle had been far from easy, and it was truly tremendous to face a pillar alone, even if she was weakened. He desperately needed assistance in this situation. Lilith appeared from the green light, and before, she used her authority of life to deprive the very life from the abyss. Because the abyss was a manifestation of Mother Goddess of Depravity's authority, it contained her will, so it can also be considered as a life. So her authority was effective, not only affecting the abyss, but also injuring her. Mother Goddess of Depravity's rage faded as she saw Lilith, and she no longer cared about other things. Immediately, she used her authority to corrupt Lilith. Lilith was nervous and anxious at the moment, unsure whether Arceus' plan would succeed. She didn't dare to come to the battlefield before, because Mother Goddess of Depravity could easily corrupt her at that time, as her pathway originated from her. Even Arceus couldn't prevent this from happening. Just as Lilith began to feel a connection with her, an illusory light shot out of the void, revealing picture-like projections around Lilith and Arceus. Some of them recorded humans' helplessness and misery when confronted by supernatural beings. Some of them used an epic-like brush to reenact scenes of humans fusing with Beyonder ingredients to gain strength and save the race. Some described the distinct cultures and traditions brought about by a black emperor, while others carried various points of view, books, and inventions. It didn't stop there, as a massive image appeared in the projection, dwarfing everything else. It depicted the ruins of a long-forgotten civilization and the miracles that they achieved without the use of any extraordinary means. The contents made the seemingly thin scroll exude a heaviness and majestic aura that quickly enveloped the entire reality. It made anyone who looked at it feel the grandeur of this civilization, which even managed to pass on the fire and flourish again. The history left behind by hundreds of millions of humans before and after the apocalypse was vast and magnificent. The might of the entire human civilization shielded Lilith, and thwarting the attempts of the Mother Goddess of Depravity, Pillar of Cosmos. Chapter 25, Sword. The projections swirled around Arceus, depicting civilization's progress and development through the ages. As he looked at it, he became slightly depressed. He is human, even if he is not biologically human, since he is now a mythical creature, or more precisely, his existence is similar to that of an abstract entity that is anything but human. However, despite the vastly different circumstances in this and previous lives, he still considers himself human, for he was born as a human in both of his lives. So seeing all of this had a big impact on him for a moment, especially when some tried to combine with the characteristics that evoke some of his past memories, which he wanted to avoid. Arceus was born in the Second Epoch and had never met his parents. For all he knew, he was always all alone from the beginning. He danced on the edge of a knife every day in that depraved era when humans were at the bottom of the food chain and were even raised as livestock by mythical races. There was no morality in that era for law of jungle reign supreme. You could just be looking for food one day, but there's also a huge chance you could have an accidental encounter with a mad ancient god. That time period was truly insane. Those who managed to survive that period went through literal hell. And he was able to survive because he possessed power of light. To be more specific, he would be equivalent to Sequence 5 of this era. He also saw many people attempting to combine with the characteristics in order to become stronger and survive, despite the fact that he also accumulated many characteristics with which he felt affinity towards, but he never attempted to combine them recklessly. As he saw what could happen if it failed, the thought of losing all humanity and becoming a mindless monster always haunted him. But his life was turned upside down when the war ravaged the land, destroying his hope and life in the process. He still remembered his teenage self running from the horde of demons chasing him, while holding the characteristics in his hand. The demons were far more powerful than him. It drove him to desperation, to the point where he didn't care about the consequences and instead wanted to combine with the characteristics to just have silver of chance. However, that's when his life changed because he ran into someone at that precise moment. It was a man dressed in black clergy robes with a silver cross around his neck. He had pure golden eyes that was like the sun. He also had a black slate in his hands. When Ocuses looked at the man at the time, he had the illusion that he was looking at the literal sun itself for a brief moment. That man saved him that day and forever changed his life. Ocuses felt somewhat complex as memories of that time flashed through his mind, but he quickly pushed the thoughts aside and looked at Lilith, who was actually smiling. Your plan really worked. Lilith's voice was slightly trembling as she spoke. She didn't realize whether it was happiness or overwhelming relief that washed over her, finally knowing she wasn't going to die. Indeed, when Ocuses' eyes met Lilith's, he smiled slightly as the complexity in his eyes faded. At the same time, a figure appeared out of thin air behind them, revealing Artisan. I didn't expect. Artisan mumbled to himself as he looked at his work. It truly astounded him at the power of civilization at the time, which could block a pillar. He knew what a pillar represented, which only added to his astonishment at what they had accomplished. Even though humanity is small in the infinite cosmos, we are capable of performing impossible feats and miracles when we work together. Ocuses spoke lightly, his gaze fixed on the Aristan. He wasn't surprised by their success now. In fact, he expected it. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the entire human civilization was shielding them and protecting them from the literal pillar of cosmos at the time. This scroll is much stronger than it was in the original future when Artisan used it during Klein's apotheosis. This will also give Artisan a significant advantage when he ascends to Paragon. Ocuses would not be surprised if the Artisan named himself God of Steam and Machinery rather than God of Craftsmanship. Ocuses knew it was all because of his own decisions, which had drastically altered the future at this point. However, given his current situation, he no longer cares about the future. Roar. A rage-filled roar shook the entire projection, as Blood Ocean covered it and waves of oceans trashed into the scroll, attempting to break it apart. This will only buy us some time, but it won't last long against her, Lilith said as she gazed at the Blood Ocean. Her heart finally calmed down. In this situation, there is only one way to win. Ocuses' face became solemn as he spoke. Because if this continues, this situation will devolve into an attrition battle, which we will lose. So, let's annihilate this entire reality. Ocuses said it simply, as if it were nothing more than a simple task. Artisan was once again taken aback by the sun god's bold new idea. But, after seeing what they had accomplished, he had no doubts in the sun god anymore. How are we going to pull it off? Lilith immediately questioned. She also appeared to believe Ocuses' crazy plan. Can you make a weapon right away? Ocuses did not respond to Lilith, instead questioning the Artisan. Yes. Artisan nodded before pulling another golden glittering scroll from his coat and opening it. We simply enter the information into this scroll, then it will be completed. But there is a requirement for characteristics, for the weapon to have some power, or it will be nothing more than ordinary. Artisan explained. Give it to me. Ocuses grabbed the scroll right away, opened it, and instructed. Umbella blessed the authority of the Desolate on the weapon while it is forming. Lilith didn't hesitate to follow his instructions, pressing her hand against the scroll, brown light erupting from the contact and illuminating it. Ocuses tapped his finger on the golden scroll at the same time, and as light also appeared from the contact, an image of the weapon began to form on the scroll according to his memories. He also blessed his authority of sun and order at this moment. Instead of using the characteristics, Ocuses simply planned to replace it with their authorities, which the weapon should be able to withstand. Soon, the image of the weapon was fully formed, thanks to the blessings of two gods and combination of various authorities. Ocuses is doing this rather than simply combining Lilith and his authorities to pull an ultimate move, because while combining the authorities sounds simple, it takes a lot of time, which they don't have right now. As a result, he couldn't think of a more efficient solution than creating a weapon, which takes far less time. Boom, boom. The projection around them was becoming increasingly blurry, as if it was about to break under the assault of the mother goddess of depravity. Ocuses didn't hesitate any longer and tapped the image of the weapon, causing it to light up, and ripples appeared around the scroll. The weapon then slowly emerged from the scroll under their attention. It was a weapon that was golden and red in color. It appeared to be a sword, but it had an unusual shape that did not correspond to what would normally be classified as something specialized like a sword. It felt more like something that existed before the concept known as a sword appeared in the world. As a result, it is not a true sword, nor does it have the shape of any known blade. This weapon was based on the Sword of Rupture, which also had the ability to tear the entire reality apart. Ocuses took the handle of the sword that had formed according to his memories. The sword in his hand spun as the aura of annihilation began to radiate from it, with red light covering the entire sword. Take away the scroll. Then he yelled at Artisan as he noticed the projection dimming and the eyes of the mother goddess of depravity staring at him from behind it. The projection vanished, and they were confronted by Mother Goddess of Depravity, who was floating directly in front of them. Ocuses aimed the sword at her, and surprisingly, she seemed to have anticipated this, as a crimson curtain appeared around her and protected her, while the blood ocean flowed towards them. But Ocuses didn't care, and he poured all of his power into his weapon, causing it to visibly shake and crack. A blazing ball of red light gathered at the tip of the sword, which looked like a red sun from afar. "This will be your last time on Earth." As he looked at her, he said with a grin on his lips, "Die, bitch." Boom! The red sun in the sword imploded, causing scorching glare of red light to erupt and spread outward in all directions, submerging and annihilating everything in its path. As she saw what this earth god managed to pull up again, her eyes were filled with genuine shock. She used her reaming power without hesitation because she perceived a real threat from it. However, it was useless. The red light formed from their combined power tore the crimson curtain and immediately submerged her. The cries of anguish and rage echoed before dying away. Soon, the red light then engulfed this entire reality, annihilating everything. Crack! Crack! The reality created by Spherote eventually started breaking under their combined power and began to show cracks all over, as if it were nothing more than a broken mirror. Boom! Finally, reality collapsed on itself, as everything crashed and broke before their eyes like shards of mirror. Chapter 26. Hermit Uniqueness. There was a huge black door that looked like a slate in the endless white space, with a being made of pure information floating in front of it. The being is none other than the artificial life, or the future hidden sage, that was still being formed. The hidden sage was transparent, and inside him was a purple book with an eye within a triangle symbol in the middle of the cover. The book was fading and slowly blending with hidden sage. The purple book was the uniqueness of Hermit. 3 figures stood in front of it, each with a different expression and complexion, but they all just stood there in silence, with no intention of moving forward. Finally, the woman among them broke the silence. "We really made it through that." With a sigh, Lilith said, "I never thought I'd say this after becoming God, a being who oversaw the entire world, but when she arrived before us, I felt so small in comparison to her, and I felt fear and dread. She didn't hide her fear. She faced and embraced her fear, because only that made her understand her own mortality and weakness more than ever. She was a pillar of the cosmos. Her true power vastly outranks us. And truth be told, we only survive due to circumstances and the assistance of others. Ocuses remarked wryly. It was such a close call at the time, and everything could have very well been destroyed. If he ever faced her true body, she would only need to use that blood ocean, and all of his authority would be corrupted by it immediately. And things would have been much worse in the beginning if he hadn't been there. Lilith would have been corrupted almost instantly. He couldn't imagine about future at that time. Everything he had built would have been destroyed, and he himself might have died. This simply made him feel powerless in the face of the vast cosmos, and it reminded that he still has a long way to go. It also mainly made him realize his own mortality. He could also die, despite being God above all. He also experienced roller coaster of emotions during this fight than ever before, and he should really take a vacation to Byam and drink traditional tea there to give himself a break. Was she a pillar? Artisan spoke in a low tone. And is she the one on the moon? This entire journey was extremely impactful for Artisan. The experience and memories of this time will certainly remain with him for the rest of his life and haunt him in his nightmares. Especially when she appeared, he felt pure terror and oppression. He never, ever wanted to go through something like that again. And just by looking at her, a lot of knowledge poured into his mind, revealing who she was. Artisan knew what a pillar was because Adam had been kind enough to tell him about it before. He knew there was a pillar in the Crimson Moon, but it was still a huge shock to him that he actually participated in the fight against her, and to top it all that, he still survived. To be honest, everything felt like a dream, no, a nightmare to him. He was still perplexed by everything that had happened. She was a pillar created by the original creator. Ocuses responded, but his gaze was drawn to the black door. However, she lost her status and became no different from the other outer gods. But she is still the most powerful of them all. How did she lose her status as a pillar? Lilith inquired, somewhat agitatedly. She too was listening in before. She felt this might shed light on many events that were previously in dark to her, such as what happened to the ruined past civilization and her origin. Ocuses, on the other hand, simply smiled and dodged her question. Forget about her. To be honest, I've had enough of her, and thinking about it makes me somewhat sick. He said this with a slight disgust. He fought with Mother Goddess of Depravity almost the entire fight, and he'd seen a lot that shouldn't have been seen, especially in Layer Abyss, where literally everything was reproducing, mating, and giving birth to abominations that should never have come to light of day. So much so that he felt compelled to pour holy water from his church over his eyes to purify him. Lilith didn't ask any further questions, but she fixed her gaze on Ocuses, who seemed unfazed by her scrutiny. That weapon. To break the silence, Artisan finally asked something. Do you like it? Ocuses was amused, and the sword of rupture appeared in his hand, still with some cracks on it, causing him to frown. Indeed, yes. Artisan acknowledged. It is the most powerful weapon I have ever seen. The design is strange, Lilith remarked as she looked at it. Can you tell me what kind of weapon it is? It can be considered a sword. Ocuses replied first, then turned to Artisan and continued. Despite what it has accomplished, it is still not the most powerful weapon on the planet. Then he interrupted them, who wanted to speak up. Now, Ocuses spoke lightly while walking forward. First and foremost, we must deal with the situation at hand and get the hell out of here. His tone changed. I really need to get some fresh air. He also put away the sword of rupture. They were even talking freely now, only because the Surfoit power that had passed into reality was almost gone after what happened, except for the residual pollution, which they must still seal, but there is no longer any danger, at least for them. They finally focused on the door in front of them, which had a strange mural on it. Image here. Ocuses narrowed his eyes at the mural, which resembled an illustration of the Tree of Life, Kabbalah, from his previous life. Isn't this just a projection of the entrance? Lilith inquired. The Sphero would have been right there behind the door. It would have been accessible previously. Ocuses spoke while raising his hand and drawing a sun symbol on the air, as if it were a piece of paper. He also put away the thoughts of resemblance that he noticed and focused on the current situation as he finished it. The symbol began to glow, while the surrounding white space became illusory and began to fade, revealing a library. Seal. He said this as the sun symbol flew towards the door and instantly fused with the black door, causing it to rumble as if it wanted to break free from that symbol. But its resistance faded as the sun symbol appeared gradually on the surface, and golden lines began to spread across the door, completely sealing it. At the same time, the white space faded completely, and they found themselves at the far end of a large library, with the door in front of them. Lilith was already in front of the artificial life when she touched it, and the entire being of the artificial life became illusory and faded away, as if it had been erased from existence. Now, Hidden Sage died completely at Lilith's hands before it could even gain consciousness. Lilith took the purple book and the two characteristics that fell out and examined them for a moment. Then, without hesitation, threw them to Ocuses. Artisan only gave a complex look as he watched the uniqueness and characteristics fall into the hands of the sun god. But he didn't speak up to say anything. Even though he has gained significant power and knowledge during this experience, he is not foolish to challenge a god who has fought a pillar alone for a long time. Finally, Ocuses sighed and looked at the hermit uniqueness and the two knowledge emperor characteristics for which he had come. Actually, throughout the fight, he somehow managed to forget about them, until being reminded after the end of the fight. No one below the rank of King of Angels may enter this place. Using his order authority, he declared, even though it is sealed, the pollution of Spherote here is still very dangerous to those below the King of Angels. All right, let's go, he finally said, as their figures vanished from Moses' ascetic order. As the sun rose, the light of dawn shone through the horizon, illuminating the vast desert on which three figures appeared out of nowhere. Ocuses, Lilith, and Artisan immediately felt divine gazes focusing on them from all over the world. The light of sun in the surroundings then dimmed slightly as a woman in a dark gown appeared. She was none other than Amonines, the first to arrive here, or should he say, the only one who had the courage to come and check among the gods. Amonines looked at Lilith with obvious concern in her eyes, which were hidden behind the black gauze. Everything is fine. Lilith smiled, a hint of relief visible on her face. We also defeated her. Ocuses didn't hesitate to add, and he immediately felt a range of emotions from the gazes directed at them. He felt shock, complexity, relief, and even a tinge of fear. Then, I will take my leave, Ocuses stated, for he didn't want to stay here anymore. Under all of their gazes, and he also needed some alone time. Under the light of the rising sun, his figure collapsed into golden light particles. Chapter 27. Aftermath after 2 weeks. The rising sun cast a golden glow across the sky, illuminating the world below. The world, which was always in turmoil due to war and strife, has been unusually calm over the last week. Conflicts and wars around the world have ceased without any warning, causing widespread confusion among the populace. But this was just an afterthought of many, as more were preoccupied with dealing with the aftermath of the disaster that swept the world with the appearance of the blood moon. As the blood moon's power seeped into the world through the barrier, the spiritual world interacted with the material world. Various unspeakable abominations and evil spirits ravaged the land on that crimson night, bringing destruction and death. It wouldn't be wrong to say that the blood of those fallen flowed into rivers across the continent under the illumination of the blood moon. On that crimson night, almost all of the church combat force of gods was dispatched, and angels and saints who were always aloof and indifferent to worldly matters could be seen dealing with the disaster. If this level of disaster occurred in the 5th epoch, almost everything would have been destroyed unless the gods themselves intervened. However, this was the age of gods, when gods walked the earth and the extraordinary was not hidden from the general populace. Most importantly, The number of Beyonders worldwide vastly outnumbers the future. To be more specific, the main combat force of any church army is demigods, not middle or low sequence Beyonders. So, despite the fact that the disaster was catastrophic, it was eventually dealt with by the combined might of all. When everyone expected the wars to continue, it did not, instead restoring the long-awaited peace on the land that many had not seen since the Third Epic. But those who were knowledgeable and experienced among the Beyonders had a feeling that this was nothing more than false peace before the storm that would sweep the world. In a vast river that flowed between mountain peaks, two figures stood around a roaring black night, wielding a sword that appeared to be made of red fire. Dark clouds obscured the sky above, with flashes of scarlet lighting. The Black Knight was dressed in full body armor and a helmet visor over its head, which only showed two red eyes. The knight was bound under the whip that seemed to be made out of the starlight itself, while he was letting out a hoarse roar in madness as he gazed at the two figures that were trying to kill him. "What the hell happened, Lucas?" A woman in a traditional blue robe with rimmed glasses on her eyes spoke loudly as she looked at the man in front of her, who appeared to be hesitant. Instead of hesitating, simply throw the light spear again and try to purify it. I won't be able to keep it up for long. It's pointless, Diana. The man with blonde hair spoke helplessly. Despite being dead and transformed into an evil spirit, it seemed to have endless vitality. My power can only weaken it, not purify it. I propose that we pray to the Lord. Finally, the blonde-haired man proposed. This is just a remnant evil spirit of an angel. Diana exclaimed as soon as she heard his suggestion. We too can handle it. Crack! The whip that was holding the knight down began to break down as crimson blood began to pour out of the cracks in the evil spirit's armor, falling the whip and immediately melting it. When Lucas noticed this, he did not hesitate to throw the spear at the Black Knight. That crimson blood, Diana's pupils constricted as she stared at the crimson blood. It should have been influenced by the blood moon and mutated. She guessed right away. This is a very rare situation, even during this time, because the blood moon caused the disaster to sweep the world and increased the power of spirits under its illumination. But after the blood moon disappeared, this advantage was lost. However, this night appears to be unique. The Black Knight appeared not long ago, after everything had calmed down. It caused massive damage in short time, and it was so powerful that they both had to come forward and besiege it right away. Diana intended to use the mystical reenactment to join the attack on it. Boom, boom, boom. But then a cluster of scarlet lightning bolts descended towards her from the sky, with such force that the mountain around them collapsed as it fell. Diana saw the Black Knight looking at her with those red eyes visible through the mask, and she could feel the spirit's rage and madness, which seemed completely focused on dealing with her, as if to exact revenge for what it had suffered. So much so that the evil spirit ignored the light spear that was heading towards it, but a blaze of flames surrounded it, completely blocking the light spear. Diana didn't waste any time and immediately used the mystical reenactment. A golden shield appeared in her hand, with a golden sun emblem in the center that shone brightly. She immediately shielded herself from the crimson lightning that was falling on her. God says it's effective, Lucas declared, pointing to Diana. Under his words, the sun emblem on Diana's shield blazed with blinding light. At the time, the entire shield was strengthened. However, just then, a divine aura descended on this location, causing the crimson lighting to stop and vanish, as if it had faded away from existence. The dark clouds then dispersed from the sky, allowing the golden sun to shine through. Ocuses stood in the light of the sun, his hands clasped on the helmet of the Black Knight and lifting the evil spirit from the ground. I remember you. With a chuckle, he said, you were the war angel under Farabody who died under my sword. He took a brief pause, as if recalling something, before continuing with a smile. Now, as I recall, I caught you and threw you into the dungeons and ordered that you to be tortured. Later, I honestly forgot about you. Ocuses hated the entire race of devils, so much so that he didn't hesitate to wage war on Farabody in the Third Epic. It appears that you did quite well after your death. Even grew stronger unintentionally as a result of her. He smiled as he continued. So why were you here? To exact vengeance on me. There is one more thing he despises now, and that is her. If he becomes God Almighty in the future, he will especially to go to meet her in the crimson moon. Ocuses looked at the Black Knight, and his grip on its visor tightened, causing cracks in it. He saw only fear in the evil spirit's mad eyes as it looked at him. Actually, it indeed had a great deal of hatred for him. And even though it has become an evil spirit, the fact that it was an angel before its fall is more than enough for it to retain some of its consciousness. However, the hatred and blood moon blinded and affected whatever was left, allowing it to attack his country without fear. But now that it was surrounded by his divine aura, the evil spirit regained some of its consciousness. Please. A painful voice came from behind the Black Knight's visor. To be honest, I don't care what you're going to say. Ocuses spoke indifferently as his smile faded, and he also noticed the red eyes of the Black Knight widening, which seemed to be filled with despair. It will make no difference to your fate. Golden flames erupted from his hands and engulfed the Black Knight's figure. The evil spirit didn't even have a chance to scream in agony before it was completely turned into ashes, and even its soul was destroyed under the burning of his golden flames. Chapter 28. Card of Blasphemy, the capital, Kingdom of Elias. The magnificent city was shrouded in a depressing atmosphere, as the majority of people walked around in black clothes, most of them heading towards the cemetery. Cries and sobs could be heard from everywhere, as some relatives clutched a photograph of their loved one tightly in their hands. While some ladies exiting the carriage in black gowns were dazed and their eyes dimmed, as if they couldn't accept the harsh reality. The church bells ringing and echoing around the city were the only thing that managed to pull them out of their states and make them continue on with their lives, as this gave them a faint sense of support, for they remembered their faith. They hoped that their loved ones would find eternal rest in God's kingdom. In a lavish restaurant in the city's central square, a waitress was carrying a plate of 3 glasses of wine while walking. She finally came to a halt in front of the last table in the row, which had 3 unusual guests. Your drinks are ready, sir. The waitress placed the drinks in front of the gentleman who had ordered first, followed by others. Would you like to order some food? Then she inquired, is there something wrong with the service? She asked, as she noticed the strange expressions of the 2 people who accompanied the gentleman. We traveled a long way to get here. So the gentleman in the black tuxedo spoke in their stead, smiling and trailing off at the end. I understand. The waitress gave a nod. Do you want to exchange with refreshments instead? It's all right. The lady with gold-rimmed glasses over her eyes spoke up, and the blonde-haired man next to her nodded in agreement. We'll place our order later, the gentleman finally said. Then she nodded and left them alone. They were none other than Ocuses, Lucas, and Diana, who decided to go around the city after the situation with the evil spirit was resolved. On the suggestions of Ocuses, they toured the city, even visiting a cemetery, the ruins caused by the disaster, and even cathedral, led by Ocuses. To be honest, it was too strange for Lucas and Diana to go to the cathedral where the mass about their Lord was taking place, with their Lord with them. They were aware, however, that their Lord was simply inspecting the damage and loss caused by the disaster. They didn't understand, though, why they had to go there and see everything when their Lord could just use his authority. Drink it, Ocuses said as he noticed them still in a daze. They nodded and started drinking their wine. Both were thinking the same thing in their heads. Lord has really gained more humanity. Diana was astounded when she realized this, because her perception of gods had been refreshed as she traveled with her Lord. She could see a distinct change in her Lord now, and she can even clearly sense her Lord's humanity, for her Lord didn't bother to even hide it. While Lucas had previously guessed it, but he has now personally confirmed it. Lord, the Blood Moon. Lucas finally asked the most important question for which they needed an answer. The entire incident was disastrous, and he and Diana were frequently called upon to deal with it. It was a real pain for them without the other 2, Angel of Temperance and Angel of Miracles, where one situation was not so good and the other was still within the Solomon Empire. The sudden appearance of the blood moon stunned them, because the blood moon had not appeared on the world since the fall of the ancestor of the blood race. They also knew that when the blood moon appeared, various gods took action. For a brief moment, they believed an all-out God's war had erupted. They had previously prayed to their Lord about this, but he had not responded specifically to them. Diana put down the wine and focused, but she had a feeling it had something to do with a previous incident that had happened to her. She also intended to inquire about it later. That Ocuses, who was enjoying his wine, paused when he heard the question. He finally put down his glass and said, "When the time comes, you'll know. It is not yet safe for you." He was just making an excuse because he didn't want to talk about this. Ocuses had his own time alone for 2 weeks, during which he rested. He was also constantly double-checking himself because he was overly cautious due to fact he was facing a once pillar with many methods that humans cannot comprehend. He was fine in the end, but his alone time wasn't without incident. Because of what happened during the blood moon, the prayers and cries of angels and others poured into his mind, and the number of souls entering his kingdom increased exponentially, forcing him to concentrate on the situation at hand. To be honest, he didn't think the situation would reach this level on a global scale at first. But this huge disaster didn't cause any waves in his heart in the least. He did, however, visit some of the affected areas to assess the situation firsthand and how much it affected his kingdom. Then he repeatedly blessed Lucas, Diana, and some saints from his church in order to assist them. This is also when he became aware of the situation with the Black Knight. Is there any other significant news? Ocuses interputed them, who still wanted to ask more. Diana and Lucas were a little disappointed because, despite everything, they still didn't get the answer for their lord. This is the most recent news, my lord. Nonetheless, Diana responded, taking the newspaper from the very space that rippled as she did so. Ocuses sighed as he read the newspaper and saw how the history had changed at the moment. The greatest invention of the epic, steam engine. It was boldly stated in the headlines. He wasn't surprised. He knew Artisan could do it after receiving all of the knowledge. Artisan's titles weren't just there as a joke. He was truly a most talented amongst of all. And because of this, the entire fourth epoch will undergo a significant shift. I can't believe I'll be witnessing the Industrial Revolution so soon. Ocuses thought with some complexity. However, he pushed away these thoughts. Then he took out a brown book and began to carry out his first plan, which he still remembers. He pushed the newspaper aside and opened the book, much to Diana and Lucas's surprise. Ocuses finally came to a halt in the pages where the entire sequence of Hermit Pathway was present. It's the same book where he previously gathered all of knowledge when he went to save Diana. He used his authority of order while pressing his index finger on the writings in the book. The power of knowledge in the book is far from ordinary because it contains the entire path of God, and it directly came from the uniqueness itself. The information emerged from the book and quickly became corporeal. Then, under his order authority, they gathered and morphed together. It eventually formed a card, which floated in front of them. The card depicted an elderly man standing alone on the summit of a mountain, holding a lantern in his right hand and a long staff in his left. The hermit. Ocuses snatched the card from the air and slid it across the table to Diana. This is the card of blasphemy. Chapter 29. Tarot cards. Diana held the card in her hand as various pieces of information appeared in her mind. Sequence 9. Mystery Prior. Sequence 8. Melee Scholar. Sequence 1. Knowledge Emperor. Sequence 0. Hermit. She couldn't believe she was holding the entire path of God that so many had earned to know, for some would give anything to obtain this knowledge. Yet here she was, holding it in the heat of the moment, without even expecting it in the least. Now, her faith in her Lord and fate itself had never been higher than it was now. Does it have the entire path of God? Lucas inquired, his gaze never leaving the card in his hand. He was well aware of what blasphemy represented, and the card was something that their Lord had created himself, so he can easily guess what it might be. Ocuses, on the other hand, was just watching them from the sidelines, enjoying his wine. Yes, the hermit, Diana responded, while she also found a lot of the depiction of the old man in the card to be far from simple, and it somewhat correlates with the essence of the hermit pathway itself. She truly felt her lord's might once more. Everything he does has a very deep meaning. She then passed the card to Lucas, whose gaze was literally too hot on the card, as she could feel the surrounding temperature rise. Lucas immediately accepted the card and fell into a trance as he digested the full path of God for the first time. Meanwhile, Diana's mind kept repeating the knowledge of the promotion ritual and formula. She was also wondering if she had a chance, even if it was slim. She has desire to advance further in order to become stronger, because she had a terrible feeling about future from the knowledge given by her idol, the mysteries of the Black Door, the blood moon, and calamity that followed. This notion was strengthened when she saw her lord giving her this without even batting an eye, and she even had a hunch her lord hasn't finished. He might even take out something else, which could be the very thing she always wanted and requested from her lord, by doing a lot of tasks and raising a lot of contribution. Her lord, on the other hand, was anything but generous. He could be very strict and expects a lot from others in return if they want anything from him. She knew there was more to this than meets the eye. "This car, my lord." Diana finally said something. "Do you find anything special in the image of card?" interpreted Ocuses, while placing the cup below in the table. "Yes." Diana nodded and said as she felt her lord's inquiring gaze. "The card has a lot in common with the essence of the hermit. The old man is alone on his path of knowledge, and the lamp he holds only illuminates his front and not the entire path, indicating that he must proceed to see what lies ahead, knowing that not everything will be revealed at once." Ocuses gave her an appreciative look before talking something out of nowhere and setting it on the table. He no longer bothered and simply handed it to her. "For the next war, some powerful archangels will be required to at least make a stand against the forces of true Creator and Solomon while they deal with them. Diana is the perfect fit right now at the moment," which correlated with his plan. There were two things on the table: the characteristics of a knowledge emperor and a deck of cards. A silence descended as soon as he placed those things. Diana stared at the characteristics in the table, her mind blank. Even though she had anticipated it, seeing it in person had a profound effect on her. As it stands in this day and age, being promoted to angel is the best one can hope for, and the chances of being promoted to archangel in a path with no god are so slim that they could be dismissed entirely. Almost all of the remaining paths have archangels in place, or sequence one characteristics are already in the hands of gods and king of angels. So, unless someone is blessed by fate, one can imagine the chances are too low. Diana was aware that her path lacked archangels, but the characteristics of a knowledge emperor were already in the hands of the king of angels and gods. Even though she requested a lot to her lord about this, she didn't have much hope, because anything involving the gods and the king of angels is bound to become complicated, just like what happened with her idol before. Diana almost jumped out of her seat when she remembered. The hermit uniqueness? Did the lord get it? The knowledge emperor here should be the one that was owned by her idol, and the lord has it now. So there's a good chance that the uniqueness. As soon as she thought of this, her heart leapt with joy. Nonetheless, she managed to resist the urge to inquire. She was well aware that nothing in this world was free, and her lord was far from generous. "Diana," Ocuses called out as she noticed her dazed state, and her eyes never left the characteristics. Was it too much of a shocker for her? "El Lord Titus," Diana strutted, trying to organize herself after jolting out of her daze. "Take it, Diana." Ocuses said this in between sips of wine. "You need to be promoted because I will be assigning you to face a formidable foe in the coming chaos." He concluded with a smile. There it is. Diana was well aware that whoever she was about to face would be anything but ordinary and could even be fatal to her. But she knew that this was the only chance that she could advance in her path. She didn't show hesitation because she knew her lord would be disappointed in her, because this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that many wouldn't even get. "Thank you very much, my lord," Diana said after she had calmed down. "I will face whoever you ask." She said it with confidence, despite having very bad feeling afterwards. Then, almost immediately, She took the Knowledge Emperor characteristics from the table and placed them in her separate space. She also noticed a deck of cards on the table, which she had previously overlooked subconsciously. Ocuses simply chuckled as he noticed this and turned to see the dejected eyes of Lucas, who was still starting at the place where the characteristics was. You, too, Lucas, will get your chance in the future, he said lightly, leaving Lucas perplexed, because almost every pathway interchangeable with the sun pathway already is God's. Ocuses wasn't joking when he said that. With the addition of hermit uniqueness, which he can use, his overall strength has increased significantly. Just like Amanine's, she holds the moon uniqueness, which is what made her much stronger than other gods. Then, let's move on to the final thing, Ocuses said, as he ignored the expressions of Lucas and Diana. After hearing that, he took the deck of cards on the table and spread it all on the table. There were a total number of 22 cards with Roman number on top of each of card and unique image related to its name in the below. The beginning of the cards was the 0, the Fool, and the ending was the 21, the World. The Tarot cards. Chapter 30, Ritual, the Fool, the Sun, the Death. Lucas examined the various images and names on the cards on the table. The cards, no matter how closely examined, gave off the impression that they were nothing more than ordinary cards. They didn't give the divine and mysteries aura like the previous card of blasphemy. However, the eerie similarities that this card has with sequence pathways for some of the names of the cards, such as the Fool, directly states the sequence 0 names. This alone caused Lucas' thoughts to wander, as if he could already see his Lord's grand plan, which may even cause the world to change. The Hermit. Diana immediately focused on the card that was within 22 among them, and then looked at the others. The Fool, the Sun, the Death, the Hangman, the Moon. The Emperor should be related to the Black Emperor, and the Wheel of Fortune is self-evident. Temperance ought to be the chained pathway, and the Judgment should be the Justiciar. These cards should be closely related to all of the pathways. Why is the Fool at the start? Is there anything unique about the Fool? Each of these cards also contains a deep mysticism reference. Diana's mind was racing with questions and thoughts as she stared at the cards. The more she looked, the more she realized how significant this was. Ordinary people may think the cards are insignificant, but in her eyes, they are priceless treasure. The Hermit card was a card of blasphemy, so these cards as well. As she looked at the cards, a terrifying thought passed her mind. These are not the cards of blasphemy. Ocuses chuckled, exposing their innermost thoughts as if he could see right through them. Diana and Lucas were slightly disappointed because they expected their lord to orchestrate the grand plan that would shake the world itself. Their imagination is truly amazing. Ocuses found it amusing to see through their guesses. He wasn't going to do what Roselle did and spread the cards of blasphemy for destined people. This would have disastrous consequences. He was almost certain that in the original timeline, Roselle became the enemy of all the gods simply by doing this. It makes no difference whether it was intended or not. Have you considered which knowledge you will spread for the ritual? Without revealing what the cards were, Ocuses asked Diana, "My lord, I am considering it, and I'm pretty sure I'd go with the second epic." Diana responded, as she had given much thought about the ritual. However, she is unsure which knowledge would be ideal and acceptable to the rest of the world. Ritual. Spread the most abstract and diverse knowledge from the Forgotten Era and let it be known around the world. You should be aware of this and proceed with caution, right? Ocuses said this with a serious expression. I don't want gods knocking on my door. Nothing about the second epoch can be revealed to the public in this way. To top it all off, her ritual's knowledge requirements should be abstract and diverse. This kind of knowledge was plentiful in the second epoch, and it could also easily cause an ordinary person to pollute it. That's why I'm still undecided, my lord, and I was planning to seek your advice. Diana nodded solemnly, knowing that if she was not careful with her ritual, it could very well lead to her demise. Even her lord would be powerless to save her. Ocuses was not surprised by her predicament. After all, strict requirements are what have kept archangels from being born in the hermit pathway until now, and not everyone is Roselle, who has knowledge of past civilization, so he didn't have to worry about this ritual in the least. Spread this. Ocuses finally revealed his true intentions with a smile. These are referred to as tarot cards. These meet all of your ritual's requirements. He pointed the tarot cards in the table. Then, Diana took the Fool card in her hand, and a flood of information about its meaning and mysticism appeared in her mind. She knew this satisfied one of the requirements, but there was still one more. My lord, Diana wanted to ask some additional questions about this. This will satisfy all requirements. You have nothing to be concerned about. Ocuses said it again, seeing her concern. The significance of the tarot cards clearly fulfills the requirements of this ritual. Thank you very much, my lord. Diana accepted this with deep gratitude, knowing her lord would not put her in danger. Despite once again having the impression that this cards and her lord's motives were anything but simple. Ocuses' intentions were not obvious simple. He is far from being generous either. He was using Diana's ritual to hide his true intention from being known by other gods. This was an experiment to strengthen his control on the hermit's uniqueness. Even though he could use it, there are still a number of issues. He really wanted to strengthen his power in order to prepare for the future. He devised this method after witnessing Hermit's authority over occultism. Even though the tarot cards on the table appear to be normal, they are not. He personally created those with the uniqueness. And if the tarot cards are speared now, they will be completely related to him under the authority of occultism. As tarot cards gain popularity around the world in field of occultism, this will have an impact on the authority, potentially increasing his control as well. Ocuses could only hope that his plan would succeed. Also, the tarot cards from a previous era being introduced by his angel will not reveal his secrets. As tarot cards were not first introduced by Roselle after the Cataclysm, but by ancient sun god. Yes, the ancient sun god had a habit of generously imparting past civilizations' knowledge to those close to him, but he never intended to impart all of it to mankind. He and the other kings of angels had done a lot of tarot divination with Ouroboros. Ouroboros also most likely still has the tarot cards given to him by the creator. How about them, my lord? Lucas inquired with concern when he noticed that this topic had concluded. Are they fine? He was referring to the angel of miracles and temperance. He's all right. Ocuses responded. My messenger prayed to me in the midst of the chaos. He will return soon enough. As for the other, things are still complicated. His voice trailed off as he considered the situation of the angel of temperance. This immediately made Diana and Lucas' hearts sink, as the angel of temperance's condition had deteriorated the last time they had met him. They've been together for a long time and have been through a lot. As they learned of his condition before, it caused them felt loss and pain. Don't worry, his situation hasn't gotten that bad yet. Ocuses sighed, for he once again felt powerless, as even he couldn't solve his angel of temperance problem right now. It's yet another bitch from the cosmos. While drinking his wine, he thought with slight frustration. But, at the very least, his words made those two feel better. Let's order, shall we? Ocuses finally put his thoughts about his angel and cosmos aside, and said with a smile, to lighten the depressing atmosphere. It's on me. Diana and Lucas finally smiled as a result of his words. They went on in the light of the sun that shone through the window, illuminating their figures. Chapter 31. Ammonizes after a month. Northern Continent, Kingdom of Night. Dong, 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 dong. As the believers entered the Gothic-styled church under the light of the rising sun, the church bells rang loudly. This vibrant street was filled with passing carriages and bustling crowds. The ladies' and children's chatter and laughter were ever present. The newspaper boy could be seen shouting about on the turn with the most recent news. There was also an unusual store in the long line of buildings. The store was painted white, a stark contrast to the city's entire style, as all of the buildings were mostly dark in color. There was a black sign with the words Tarot Divination and the price written on it. The passing people, on the other hand, paid no attention and ignored this peculiar shop. A beautiful woman walked among the passing crowds, her long black hair reaching her hips. She was dressed in a black layered gown with sparkling lights that resembled stars in the night sky and a black gauze over her face. Despite walking among the throngs, everyone avoided and ignored the black-haired woman subconsciously, Depsite woman's temperament and aura were divine and otherworldly. The black-haired woman eventually came to a halt in front of an alley and turned to walk into it. As she walked into the alley, the sun's rays dampened, leaving nothing but thick darkness in front of her. The darkness moved frequently, as if it contained demons that seemingly emerged from the terrible nightmares itself. Even after seeing this, the black-haired woman continued walking into the darkness. With her in it, the surging darkness calmed down and cleared away, revealing the scene within. A girl's whimpering voice echoed, and the ground was stained with crimson blood. In the midst of it all, there was a corpse of a man with no upper body and a teenage girl with a torn dress that revealed most of her body kneeling on the floor with a white bone knife in her hand, which she was tightly clutching. Her hands and blade were covered in crimson blood. Her eyes were wide and never left the corpse. The entire scene revealed the tragedy that occurred here. The white bone sword was coated in darkness, which frequently let out wisps, causing the light in the surroundings to dim. The black-haired woman looked at the teenage girl in silence for a moment before approaching her. The girl sensed someone approaching her and immediately pointed her sword at the black-haired woman. "Please don't come me." The girl stuttered as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Please esi don int, I bgu." With panic in her eyes, she pleaded, her voice becoming smaller as she spoke. Even after seeing this and walking forward to her, the black-haired woman's expression behind the gauze didn't change in the least. "No!" As she realized this, the girl let out a painful cry. However, she was immediately drawn into an embrace, which swept away all her fear and panic, and she almost felt like she was back in her mother's embrace. As her grip loosened, the white bone dagger in her hand fell to the floor. But there was no sound of it hitting the floor, as if the dagger had vanished in the middle. "Everything is fine." A black-haired woman's ethereal voice sounded, and she immediately fell completely relaxed. All the painful experiences that had been replaying in her mind vanished, leaving her completely tranquil. "You are safe now." The black-haired woman raised her hand to the air, then the black veil appeared in her hand. She used it to cover the girl's body due to her torn cloths. The black-haired woman finally let the girl out of her embrace after the girl stopped trembling, but the girl didn't let go and was still clinging to her. The black-haired woman's tranquil eyes finally showed pity as she looked at the girl. "Can you tell me your name?" she inquired softly of the girl. The girl finally separated from her embrace as she heard her voice and clung to the veil draped over her. Then she looked at the lady before her in silence for a moment and whispered, "Ariana, what a lovely name." The woman with black hair complimented. "Yours?" Ariana questioned after some hesitation. "Amanines." The black-haired woman replied lightly, then asked, "Where is your mother?" "She passed away." Ariana whispered this as tears welled up once more. "Attempting to save me from a monster raging across the blood river. I begged and prayed to the goddess countless times, but there was no hope." Her eyes became dim, while her voice became quieter. "She left me alone in the world, with broken promises and a white dagger." "Dagger?" Ariana panicked when she realized the dagger had vanished. "Here." Amanines handed over the dagger that she was holding in her hands. Ariana snatched the dagger from her grasp and turned to face the Amanines with vigilance. But she immediately felt her eyelids become heavy and her vision was becoming blurry. "I am sorry, Ariana." She eventually fell asleep after hearing the Amanines' voices. Amanines looked at Ariana in silence. Her expression couldn't be seen, as it was completely hidden by the black gauze that covered her face. When she turned around, a man with black wings appeared behind her. "Bring her to church. Make certain she grows up well." Amanines spoke to her angel in an etheric voice. Her mother was Angela, one of our martyred saints from the Crimson Night. She stated, "Yes, my lady." The angel replied and inquired with confusion, "We could have done it for you, my lady." Amanines interrupted him. "I'm here for another reason, but I noticed her as well on the way." The angel nodded, before taking Ariana and disappearing soon afterwards. Amanines finally turned to look at the man's broken body lying in the pool of blood and raised her hand, as an ethereal soul was pulled out of his body and reached her hands. Without even looking at it, she crushed it in her hands. The man's body then faded out of existence along with his soul. Finally, Amonines approached the white building with the tarot divination sign written on it and entered it. Ring. The bell rang as she entered the strange and dimly lit room with only one table in the center and a man sitting on one of the chairs, holding a deck of tarot cards. There was a crystal ball on the table with candles. Amonines, sit down. Looking at his customer, the man with short white hair said calmly, "I never took you for a charlatan, Occuses," Amonines said with an actual smile. But as she looked around the room, she felt a sense of déjà vu. Chapter 32. Tarot divination. Occuses ignored her remark and spoke solemnly. "Are you here for tarot divination or not?" Amonines finally pressed down the feeling she had when she entered this place and went along with him surprisingly. "Yes." She said this as she entered the room and sat in the chair facing him. "Let's see if you could divine for me." Her ethereal voice echoed throughout the room. It's not easy to divine for a god, and it may even cause huge ripples in the river of destiny while doing so. This is especially true for her, who was once known as the goddess of misfortune. "Oh," Ocus's brows were raised. His golden eyes glowed with a light purple light. "Amonines, are you underestimating me? After everything that has happened?" "No, far from it," Amonines responded as the image of the Occuses stabbing and betraying the creator without hesitation flashed through her mind. "I was simply stating the facts, Occuses." But she continued to speak in an ethereal tone without any change. "Facts? Huh?" Occuses spoke while his lips turned upwards to form a smile, and his golden eyes turned completely purple and shone lightly. "Let's find out, shall we?" He took the remaining decks and gathered them all together, then stacked them all together into a deck and asked her in between, "What would you like to learn from the tarot reading?" Amonines remained silent for a brief moment as she gazed at the tarot cards in his hand, various past memories flooding back to her, evoking various emotions in her heart. Most importantly, loneliness, sadness, and nostalgia. Despite this, she didn't seem to show much change on the surface, quietly gazing at the cards. Present, past, and future. Finally, she stated the most common and popular type of tarot reading from her past life. It took her a moment to respond, and Occuses was patient, as if he expected this. Occuses said quietly as he pushed the deck of cards towards Amonines, "Shuffle the deck and cut it." Amonines took the deck of cards in her hand and inquired, a smile visible behind the gauze. "Why?" "Occuses, can't you do it on your own? I didn't expect you to ask for my assistance." She was referring to her authority over misfortune. "No, just normal shuffle." Occuses retorted, shaking his head, and continued to say in a deep tone, "Everyone's fate can only be unraveled by themselves, and I can only read it." What he said was a deep connection to Hermit, as Hermit can only peer in a fate, nothing more. As he finished, the already dim lights on the wall went completely dark, plunging the entire room around them into seemingly endless darkness, with only the candle on the table giving illumination, which also began to flicker, as if it might also extinguish. As a faint and illusory whooshing sound echoed from the darkness, the air became thick and slightly mysterious. A colorless river appeared and flowed around them, with them in the middle of it all. The river of destiny. Occuses and Amonines were unfazed by the changes in their surroundings. Amonines, on the other hand, was taken aback when she heard his sentence. She felt as if she had already been here and done this divination for someone else in place of Occuses. The feeling of déjà vu returned, but she was well aware that she hadn't done divination for anyone in a long time. Something is wrong, she thought, but her hands didn't stop shuffling and cutting the deck before placing it in front of Occuses. She pressed down this feeling while also deciding to check later. "Let's get started." Occuses stated this while reaching for a card from the top of the deck and placing it to the left of the Amonines. "This card represents your past." While placing the second card in front of Amonines, his voice became quieter. "This card represents your present. This card represents your future." He finally placed the third card to Amonines' right. "So, which one would like to know first?" Occuses asked solemnly, his purple eyes deep as he looked at the woman in front of him. Amonines remained silent for a brief moment before speaking. Future. Ocuses nodded and flipped the card to Ammonize's right, causing the calm river of destiny to surge, which even alarmed two snakes of Mercury who were going about their business elsewhere in the world. A skeleton dressed in black armor, riding a white horse, was depicted on the card. The skeleton carries a black flag decorated with a white, 5-petal rose. A royal figure appears to be dead on the ground, while a young woman, child, and bishop can be seen pleading to the skeleton in armor. It was numbered 13. Death. Death represents the end and the beginning, Ocuses said, his voice eerie. It can be regarded as a never-ending cycle that no one can avoid. It appears that your future is anything but calm, Amonines. You might even find yourself in situations where. Present. Amonines interrupted him rudely, her tone unchanging, but her deep gaze fixed on the death card. Ocuses did not express anger at being interrupted. Keep in mind that the tarot cards only provide guidance on your path. As he flipped over the card in front of Amonines, he said in light tone. The card featured a revolving wheel. 4 winged creatures sit atop clouds in each corner of the card. It was branded 10, Wheel of Fortune. Ocuses explained calmly. It symbolizes change, luck, and, most importantly, a turning point in one's life. Don't you think it's quite accurate, Amonines? After everything that has happened, you are on the verge of a new era. Indeed, Amonines spoke ethereally, her voice devoid of surprise, as if she had anticipated this. The past, she inquired, her voice finally changing to a low tone. Ocuses Purple's eyes lit up with anticipation as he turned over the card to the left of Amonines. A colorfully dressed character was depicted on this card, wearing ragged headgear with a stick over his shoulder. There was a bindle hanging on the end of the stick, and a puppy was following behind him. It was numbered 0. The Fool. Ocuses' voice echoed in the deep darkness, and the very river of destiny that was flowing froze with the appearance of the card. The Fool? As she looked at the card that appeared, Amonines felt complex. She looked up at the endless darkness, as if she wanted to peer through it, to see the endless gray fog and that blurred door. It's interesting to see the Fool in someone else's past. Ocuses said this while smiling and looking at Amonines with deep purple eyes. It represents a new beginning, one that is full of infinite possibilities. It is not the same as the death before. It appears that your past has been anything but ordinary, Amonines. He implied. For a brief moment, Amonines and Ocuses stared at each other in silence, without saying anything. Then she abruptly raised her hand and took the 3 tarot cards from the tables. I'm bringing these cards with me. She said this without responding to his previous divination. Ocuses didn't stop her and let her take it, but a winning smile flashed across his lips for a brief moment, which Amonines completely missed as she was placing the cards in her gown. Enough already, Charlton. Despite the divination, Amonines still addressed him as such while speaking. What exactly are you here for? Chapter 33. Deal. Ocuses abruptly put away the tarot cards and snapped his fingers. Snap! Their surroundings changed abruptly as twilight dawned on them, illuminating everything around them. They were sitting at the same table and chair, but they were no longer in the store or in the endless darkness, but on the snowy mountain's edge, where a chilly wind blew. The vast fields of wheat grew beneath the mountain range, and the golden light of the sun shone on these fields, giving them a more golden hue. From the top of the mountain, it appeared as if a golden ocean lay beneath them. The crystal snow landed on the table, which now had 2 cups filled with coffee. Here, Ocuses handed the cup to Amonines, who looked at it strangely before taking it. Don't you already know why I'm here, Amonines? Ocuses chuckled as he took a sip of coffee and immersed himself in the scenery in front of him. You intend to start a war on Solomon and True Creator. Amonines spoke as she drank the coffee, which she hadn't had in a long time. This brought back a lot of memories of past. She was also looked deeply at Ocuses, who was immersing himself. She and Ocuses, on the other hand, have known each other since the second epoch. Their relationship was, to be honest, she didn't know how to describe it. For a god, It's difficult to express anything in human terms, even if they were once human. However, Ammonites could only describe their relationship as on pretty good terms in a roundabout and vague way, if she truly wanted to express it. She and Ocuses had spent a lot of time together during the Third Epoch, as he had been assigned to her by the ancient sun god to deal with a variety of issues in that era. Those were actually good times, at least for her. However, everything changed after the fall of ancient sun god. Yes, Ocuses spoke softly, his face illuminated by soft sunlight. Solomon must die in order to bring down Sassurer. He cannot continue to rule over the continent. His time has passed, and it's truly amusing to consider that even after his death, the world is still dominated by him. With a complicated smile, he said, he was referring to True Creator as Sassurer, as True Creator was an amalgamation of Sassurer and the humanity of the ancient sun god, which also what caused him to go insane. Sassurer, Ammonites whispered the name with a slight ripple in her heart and went on without any change on the surface. Indeed, everything that happened after that was still dominated by him. Don't you remember that banquet that caused quite a stir because of you, Solomon, and others? That banquet, I recall that, despite being an angel, Solomon was allowed to attend because the Creator took notice of him and predicted that he would change the world. Ocuses said with a smile, to be honest, I didn't take it seriously at the time, because the Creator always gave such vague prophecies to many who didn't amount much in the end. Oh, and most importantly, Solomon was truly one of a kind. He literally used various methods to gain our favor and get on the good side of me and other kings of angels. Given what had happened, he expected to succeed, but he was utterly humiliated by us in the end. However, look how he turned the tables on everyone. Ammonites interputed, I honestly didn't expect Solomon to join forces with the True Creator, despite the fact that he would face all of us. Well, nothing could deny that Solomon was a daring man. He took advantage of the opportunity, despite the grave danger, and eventually succeeded in suppressing us all. Ocuses stated as he gazed at the setting sun. In a way, he retaliated against me, Herabergen, and Leodoro by labeling us as evil gods in his kingdom. I heard that some people they're even afraid to recite our divine names because of this. What do you say, Ammonites? Ocuses finally inquired, turning to face her. You expect me to persuade Leodoro and Herabergen? Ammonites remarked lightly. Yes, if we all get together. There will be war right away. At the very least, Herabergen will be civilized. But I can't say the same for the other, though. Ocuses smiled. You are the only one who can bring them together. I'll check on Badheel and on Bella on your behalf. Ocuses said with a chuckle after noticing her silence. Don't you think it's a perfect deal between us, Ammonites? Fine. Finally, Ammonites nodded. However, it'll be difficult to actually succeed for those two, without any. The uniqueness of a justiciar will soon fall into the hands of the Solomon. Ocuses said simply, making Ammonites silent. And considering the threat of Cosmos, it shouldn't be too difficult. I will also bring necessary evidence to the meeting. You really thought of everything before coming to meet with me. Ammonites spoke up unexpectedly. You should have planned this for a long time, didn't you? It's different from who you used to be, for you've changed a lot from the last time we meet. The Ocuses she knew before was prideful and filled with vanity. He was a firm believer in power and disdains asking for help from others, even in dire circumstances. He frequently prefers to deal with situations with crushing force rather than taking a roundabout path. Yet here he was. Ammonites had never been more aware of the passage of time and its impact on others than she was now. It was amazing to see how much change was happening around her, yet she had remained the same since she ascended. She suddenly realized how much humanity she had lost along her path. After experiencing everything about humanity and divinity, one is always bound to change. Ocuses softly stated, Ammonites, you should know more about this than I do. Isn't that right? He implied. Indeed, Ammonites responded, much to Ocuses' surprise. However, she did not delve deeply. You notify me of the date, and then we can finalize the alliance of 6 gods at that time. She spoke to him without looking at him. Ocuses noticed Amanine's acting strangely, but he didn't pry further because he knew her character well. All right, then. He gave a nod. Do you want to accompany me? The first Knowledge Emperor is about to be born. It would be a sight to behold, and your presence might help. He extended an invitation. I apologize, Ocuses. Amanine spoke in the same ethereal tone that had not changed. In any case, congrats on having an archangel under your seat. Her tone softened as her figure became illusory. I'm looking forward to seeing you again, Ocuses. So until then, she faded away, leaving Ocuses alone on the mountaintop, who didn't show much change after seeing her sudden departure. Finally, Ocuses sighed as he turned to face the setting sun with his heterochromatic eyes, which were now golden and purple, symbolizing the authorities he now controls. Chapter 34. Knowledge Emperor. The twilight sun cast a glow across the Ontal Mountains as two people stood on the mountain's edge. You got this, Diana, Lucas stated, in order to boost her confidence in her ascension. Remember when I was nearly killed by demonic wolves? You were like my destined knight, coming to my aid, and it surprised me because it was the first time I'd seen a violent woman like you, who didn't hesitate to tear apart the wolf and didn't flinch when the blood died on you. It was kind of hot, and I must say, you are the most heroic of us all. He said it with a grin on his lips to lighten the tense atmosphere around them. It is not easy to be promoted to Archangel, as there is a high risk of losing control. Despite preparing and performing the ritual for a long time, many people have failed in the ascension. If you like me that much, Lucas, you could just ask me out, Diana said, and her words made Lucas smile, but it quickly froze at the next words. However, I should say that I will reject you, because you are too much of a sissy for my taste, for I can't accept a man who nearly fainted in fear at the sight of that little wolf before. She remarked mockingly. This bastard dares to call this lady violent. She reflected, but she couldn't deny that his words did help to ease her pressure and mood. Diana laughed when she noticed Lucas' twisted expression. That is not correct. You're twisting the whole situation, Wolf. Lucas was defending his honor with all his might, but Diana's laughter suddenly froze as she noticed a flash of pain in his eyes, which he didn't hide well. Her instincts as a sage can't deceive her. Oh my goodness, does he really have feelings for me? She didn't expect this in the least. Her heart, which had just calmed down, had just set off a massive wave. Lucas came to a halt as well when he noticed her odd expression on him. Did she notice it? He could feel a little panic in her heart, but also a little excitement, which he himself didn't notice as he observed her reaction. However, much to his dismay, she didn't change much after that. I'm going, Lucas. Diana spoke up after she had calmed down. She cannot allow herself to be affected in this way, especially now. The next step is critical for her. She'll deal with Lucas and the rest later. I can't afford to waste any more time. She paused and said, slightly hesitantly, thank you for being here and for all the times before. With a relieved smile, she finished. Go ahead, Diana. Lucas put his jumbled thoughts aside and sincerely blessed her, knowing of the situation as well. You will undoubtedly succeed, as the Lord is also watching over you. I've already planned a lavish banquet for the occasion. Diana walked to the edge of the mountain and turned to face him, holding a potion in her hand. She didn't hesitate any longer, opening the lid and drinking the potion in one gulp. I can hardly wait, Lucas. After finishing the potion, she finally said with a smile on her lips, you should leave now because things are about to get out of hand. Lucas also wanted to leave, but when he saw what she did, his eyes widened. She jumped off the mountain with an excited smile on her face. He didn't hesitate to dash to the edge and yell at the top of his lungs, all the while staring at her falling figure. Diana, you are truly a madwoman. What the hell were you think? Before he could finish, a blinding pure light fell on his figure, teleporting him out of this place. Diana chuckled as she fell when she managed to hurt him. She was also fully concentrated at this point, so her fall had no effect on her at all. Regardless, she decided to jump on a whim. Well, he's not completely wrong. She was thinking as she felt a change within her body, as her body began to become illusory at an alarming rate. She disintegrated into thick and intricate knowledge, converting into an existence to that of a flux of information. The entire mountain range, as well as the flowing river between the peaks, the clouds, and the vast plains near the mountains, all lost their sense of reality, for they had been broken down into most fundamental blocks of information. Everything she had learned from the beginning of her life until now was included in the knowledge that had broken away from her. It made no difference whether it was insignificant or extraordinary. The flux of knowledge included everything, from second epic legends and rumors to secret knowledge that could pollute many simply by knowing it. It was a truly chaotic, yet miraculous sight to behold at the time, because every piece of her knowledge was transforming, and they all now possessed power. Many divine gazes fell on this place, but none dared to interfere because the aura of sun covered the entire place. Diana felt that information from all over the world was infiltrating her knowledge. Without her previous experience, she would have lost herself right away. This was a far more dangerous state than when she was promoted to sage, because the information infiltrating her came from all over the world. They gravitated to her, as if she were a magnet attracting them all. However, her knowledge bore a distinct imprint of her, and it entailed a tremendous amount of power. It was extremely solid, and it couldn't be dispersed by information from all over the world in a short period of time. It assisted her in stabilizing her consciousness and gradually gathering the dissipating flux of knowledge around her body to rebuild her body. The process began to fail because she couldn't keep up with the information of the entire world infiltrating her. Just then, in the vortex of information that was infiltrating her, various gleaming stars lit up, and the stars quickly filled the vortex. Simultaneously, the tarot cards that had become popular around the world all lit up in correspondence to the stars, with an illusory light invisible to all, except the divine gazes. The appearance of stars around the vortex completely slowed the flow of information towards her. They also functioned as her anchor. She also felt the prayers and concerns of everyone who was close to her. She also noticed her Lord standing in the sky, watching over her and protecting her during this perilous time. All of this improved her condition, allowing her to resist the ancient will that was gradually awakening within her body. Diana reassembled her body and used her anchors to balance out the terrifying will that was surfacing in her body, seizing this brief moment of peace immediately. She floated in, surrounded by a turbulent vortex of information. When she moved her hand, all the information that had previously attempted to infiltrate her completely obeyed her will, as if she were the emperor of them all. A figure appeared in front of her, unaffected by everything around her. She noticed her Lord standing before her, holding a purple crown in his hand. With a smile, he placed the purple crown on her head in front of all. The Birth of Knowledge Emperor. Chapter 35. His Humanity, the Birth of Knowledge Emperor under the seat of Ocuses finally threw the peaceful world into disarray. Small conflicts have already occurred between the three kingdoms of Ocuses, Leodero, and Herbergen, despite the fact that it did not result in all-out war as it had in the past. It will be in a matter of time. The most important thing was that troops stationed along the borders of the Solomon Empire and the Kingdom of Gods increased exponentially following that ascension. There was even talk that the War Angel, who hadn't been seen in public for many years, had appeared in the border. This alone made many people around the world concerned about the future, for there was a well-known legend in the second and third epochs that stated that the appearance of the War Angel of Creator in the world only signifies the coming of war. It was exaggerated to the point where it was claimed that the mere presence of the War Angel would cause strife even among the closest of all and could spark immediately conflict even among allies who've been through hell together, thus making the War Angel infamous throughout the world, as even the mention of his name can cause even the bravest to cower in fear. The rumors became full-fledged and spread all over the world, causing widespread chaos on the northern continent. For many people believed the world war was almost upon them. However, unlike in the past, the churches of gods did not maintain the order and went silent without warning, exacerbating the situation among the population and beyonders. In the end, it didn't matter if you were mortal or extraordinary, angel or demigod. They all felt the looming shadow of war over the entire continent. All that was required was a spark to blow the horns of war, for blood and fire shall dye the land again. The demons shall rise in the ashes. A man held a glass of wine on the balcony of a white Gothic castle, under a night sky filled with gleaming stars and the crimson moon. He was dressed in an all-black classic suit and trousers, with his short white hair slightly messy as usual. His iris were golden and violet, which shone slightly, giving him a mysterious and enchanting vibe that can pique any lady's interest at first sight of him. The man was drinking wine while seemingly immersing himself in the night, while behind him was the door that revealed the ongoing banquet full of laughter and chatter. Couples could be seen dancing to the music as it echoed throughout the room. Despite the chaos outside, nothing seemed to affect this place, creating a stark contrast, as if they were two different worlds. A man and woman dressed in classic robes emerged from the door, heading towards the white-haired man on the balcony. They were none other than Lucas and Diana, were on their way to meet their lord, who had unexpectedly arrived at the banquet. "Lord, you could come inside," Lucas inquired quietly, careful not to distribute his lord too abruptly. The lord's presence will add more significance to the entire banquet. Diana, who was with him, nodded in acquiesces while holding a glass of wine. She was dressed in a long dark gown, a diamond necklace with a dark ruby in the center, and a purple crown on her head. Her eyes had changed color, becoming a deep purple from blue, which gave off a mystic vibe. "Tonight is Diana's night," Ocuses retorted, his gaze fixed on the night sky. "My presence will only steal her spotlight. Don't mind me continue with your banquet. I just came here for the wine," he went on in a light tone. Lucas nodded, not wanting to disturb his lore any longer, and turned to return inside, while Diana paused, as if she had more questions, but she walked with Lucas in the end. Ocuses' light voice echoed in Diana's mind at that precise moment. "Love is a precious thing, Diana. It's even more true for those of us who are gradually losing ourselves on the path. This may be the only light that shines through the darkness within us. Don't hesitate when the time comes, because it may be the only solace in this crazy and twisted world." Diana came to a halt in her path. Her expression was hidden behind a veil of crimson darkness that had become thick and mysterious at this moment. Her hands slightly clenched. Her body then relaxed suddenly, and she turned to see her lord one last time, who was still staring at the night sky without looking at her. She then turned around and walked back to Lucas, holding his hands, much to his surprise. Her indifferent face, which had remained unchanged since being promoted to Archangel, finally broke as her lips turned upwards to form a smile while gazing at Lucas under the light of the crimson moon. They entered together, as the cheers and chatter filled the ball immediately. Ocuses drank the wine, and a sigh escaped his lips as he finally turned away from the starry sky and looked at their smiling figures entering the ball. Humanity, divinity, love. Ocuses reflected as his thoughts grew. Despite the fact that he messed around a lot in his younger years, he never had true love in both of his lives. But, having read a plethora of romance novels, he had a good idea of how it would feel in a somewhat clicked way. It would start with euphoria and excitement at the prospect of seeing her and spending sleepless nights thinking about her. The racing heart, the way she looks at you, and, most importantly, how you feel that it's right when you're around her. Love is an essential component of humanity, shaping us as we progress. It is precious, especially in this dark and depraved world where one may not even find it among the higher beings. Ocuses looked at them as he walked into the hall, his eyes filled with complicated emotions. Love, huh? As he reflected on himself, he shook his head with a wry smile. One might wonder why he is always partaking in mortal activities such as drinking and attending this banquet. This may have appeared to be the result of his humanity, but things had changed now. This was done solely to preserve what little humanity he had left. Simple things can sometimes be the most helpful. When one attains divinity, They are liberated from the majority of human needs. As one progresses closer to becoming an angel, they may achieve semi-immortality. But during each step, they also lose something about their previous selves, and in the end, some completely abandon humanity, for they might go insane in despair, seeing everything they loved and remembered fade away in the tides of time, but they would always remain unchanged. Ocuses took a deep breath to calm himself. The past days had not been anything but peaceful for him, despite the fact that everything appeared to be going according to his whim and plan. He took control of hermit uniqueness to a large extent, as his plan succeeded, and the control was only strengthened further when Amonines personally took his cards, despite the fact that he did a lot of subtle manipulation here and there, which she probably noticed. But it didn't matter in the end, because as he got what he wanted, he became stronger. Nothing in this world, however, was free. As he took control of hermit uniqueness, the will of the oldest one, which was weakening within him at a rapid pace, completely slowed down. He also felt his humanity. Ocuses didn't regret it, though, as he knew this would happen from the start, and still went ahead with it. After he thought of his future, he drank all of his wine as his thoughts raced through his mind. Ocuses finally turned to face the darkness in the balcony corner and asked. Finally, a genuine smile dawned on his lips. "Don't you think they're perfect for each other, Blaze?" With a glance, he indicated Diana and Lucas in the ballroom. With his voice, a figure emerged out of the darkness, accompanied by two black wings. He had a chiseled face and shoulder-length wavy black hair. He was dressed in a silver suit with matching trousers. He also had deep blue eyes that were always indifferent. The Angel of Miracles, Blaze Larson. Chapter 36. Blaze Larson, my lord. Blaze said immediately after arriving. Under the crimson moonlight, Ocuses looked at his Angel of Miracles in silence. Blaze Larson, the Angel of Miracles, was famous throughout the world. The bards themselves travel across nations to sing his praises. There were various legends about him throughout the world. Some tell of his tales of slaying mighty dragons and of saving an entire country from the Demonis for only 5 coins from a little girl. He was also heralded as the messenger of the sun god himself, and many consider his will to be the command of the sun god himself at times. In the third epoch, the low-sequence pathway formulas were widely circulated. It wasn't difficult to become extraordinary during that times. Blaze was a vagrant and part-time thief. Throughout his childhood, he learned many tricks and methods for becoming successful in his job and surviving in that era without losing his life in the hands of extraordinary people. Regardless of his profession, he would go out of his way to help others in need if asked for a price, of course. Because of the connections he made in his teenager years, he was given the opportunity to become a Beyonder. He had several options, ranging from the well-known Sun and Tyrant pathways to the revered Paragon pathway. Yet, he chose the Fool path, and when others found out, they mocked him for being a literal fool. But Blaze was unconcerned about what others thought of him. To be honest, he preferred the error path because it was more suitable for him. But the potion formula for that is even more difficult to find. He didn't know if he'd get another chance, so he chose the Fool path without hesitation, as he knew that it was adjacent to error. During the third epoch, the most infamous paths were the error, Fool, and door. The rumors about it became so widespread that it was given a special name to represent it, the Cursed Pathways. They called it that because most who walked these paths would face the damned fate before becoming demigods. However, Blaze still chose this path, and his life was forever changed as a result. He didn't abandon his thieving career even after becoming a well-known diviner among mortals. When he advanced further, he even started his own circus. His life was not without adversity. Like any Beyonder of the Mysteries pathways, he was on the verge of losing control on numerous occasions. However, he pushed through it all and survived by sheer willpower at times. His desire for power, however, did not dim when he couldn't obtain the formulas for promotion, because he had witnessed and lived in the dark, cruel world long enough to understand the importance of power. That's when he decided to try his luck and joined the regiment of the King of Angels, who were actually recruiting for some competent Beyonders. Blaze knew that if he wanted to advance on his path, This was the best way. As the king of angels served the creator himself, it would be easy for him to find about the potion formula there, even though he disliked being restricted because of how he lived. But he knew he had to make some sacrifices. He didn't think they'd accept someone like him after learning that recruitment was for the Legion under the White Angel. He didn't have anything in common with those who were regarded as the most noble and respected at the time. But, much to his surprise, he was accepted by them after they learned about his path and past, which wasn't difficult for them to discover. Blaze expected to be a misfit, and this time his expectations were not disappointed. He was alone during his endeavors and mission, which he performed in order to increase his contribution and directly redeem for the potion. That's when he met another misfit like himself on a group mission he reluctantly accepted. Diana Knight was her name. She referred to herself as a researcher of truth and even boasted to him about knowing the White Angel and the Angel of Destiny themselves. Even though he didn't believe at first, he noticed her noble temperament and assumed she'd be a burden who only knows how to talk. When he saw the same noble woman tearing apart a mountain-sized giant in a single move, he realized how wrong he was. They hit it off right away and became friends, or so she labeled our relationship. Because of his past experiences, he never trusted anyone and wore various masks to not reveal his true self. Nonetheless, he felt this will be different in some way. However, this was also the time when he was confronted with a challenging choice for the second time in his life: the promotion to demigod. He was already considered a miracle on the Legion of Light. They called the Legion of White Angel just that for being able to advance to this stage without the assistance of anyone else. Blaze was aware of the extreme danger, but he also didn't understand why this path of mystery was so different from others. But he didn't give up and decided to apply for assistance during this promotion and ritual. He put on a spectacular show, slaying a demigod dragon in front of a large crowd of legionnaires. However, he didn't expect someone to appear right before him, before he could drink his potion. A man with white angel wings and a golden burning eye stood before him. At the time, Blaze had a subconscious feeling that the arrival of the angel would completely change his life. Ocuses was the one who arrived at the time, and he was intrigued by someone who had made it this far down the fool's path. At the time, he obtained this information from Diana. He was honestly surprised when the once thief successfully promoted himself to demigod of the fool pathway in his presence, as the will of Celestial Worthy was so strong at the time that the ancient sun god himself did not want the pathways to spread. However, this thief far exceeded many people's expectations, which greatly impressed him. He ordered Blaze to be assigned to a special unit directly under him. Blaze advanced with his assistance, and he became his messenger after proving himself worthy. Only after the will of Celestial Worthy weakened did he finally advance to the angel at the start of the fourth epoch. The Angel of Miracles was thus born, and while many referred to him as the kindest, he was far from it. He walked around the world with many different faces, leaving various legends behind. Even though he had never trusted others before, but the passing of centuries changed him. He finally found his own place with the people he cared about, a place he could call home at the end of the day. Blaze then looked at Diana and Lucas in the banquet and said, "They are indeed perfect for each other." His voice was rather a little low. Ocuses raised his brow. "Your rivalry with Lucas should not be over." "No, my lord." Blaze shook his head vigorously, attempting to deny it. "It was just, I didn't expect anything like this between them." He had seen a lot in his life and knew how rare this was, especially when it happened to his friends, which come as quite a shocker to him. "But I am genuinely happy for them," he said, smiling as he looked at them. Ocuses hummed and inquired, "How was the Solomon Empire?" "Strange." Blaze paused, his face solemn. "Freaky." "Thrilling." "Dangerous." Ocuses was unsurprised and asked indifferently, "Who was the first to give in?" "Tronsoist, my lord." Blaze felt strange when he heard the tone of a lord, but he still continued. Ocuses sighed suddenly as he turned to face him and said, "Are you still awaiting me to call you out? I expected you to be as daring as before." Blaze's eyes widened as tampered and erased memories surfaced simultaneously, but before he could process them, everything went dark for him. Ocuses looked at Blaze indifferently, who had completely changed his demeanor at the time. Blaze took out a monocle and placed it over his right eye, spoke in a voice that didn't belong to him. It's been a while, hasn't it? Ocuses. Chapter 37. Plan of Ocuses. What brings you to my kingdom, Amon? Ocuses asked the Creator's son, as if he was completely clueless. Under the crimson moonlight that illuminated the balcony, instead of the angel of miracles, a young man with pointed hat and monocle over his right eye stood in the angel's place. He was leaning on a pillar of the balcony, with a smile, as he gazed at Ocuses. Would you believe me if I told you I was only here for the banquet? Also, to tell congrats to the little girl who was promoted to Archangel. Amon approached him, stood in front of him, and smiled before speaking. Despite the fact that he was faced with a literal god, he showed no respect or even a change. Ocuses stared at the angel of time in silence before asking unexpectedly, "So, why don't we to the banquet? I also need to get some more wine, and Diana would be overjoyed to hear about your arrival." "That would be brilliant." Despite his previous words, Amon said with a smile, "Come on, Amon." Ocuses invited Amon with a gesture of his hands as he moved forward. Amon nodded and walked behind him, but his smile faded for a brief moment. Ocuses' lips turned upwards to form a smile at the same time. The blinding light of the chandelier sparkled on them as they entered through the door, and a cacophony of noises echoed. It became clearer as chatters and laughter brimmed the entire hall. Ladies and gentlemen danced in the center to classic music, while others watched and chatted alone. In the midst of it all, Lucas and Diana danced, with smiles on their faces, drawing everyone's attention. "Would you like one, Amon?" Ocuses inquired as he took 2 glasses of wine from the table and held one out to him. Amon nodded and accepted it, his intrigued gaze drawn to the entire banquet. Like a spectator, despite this, no one had noticed them since their arrival. "Don't you think the entire banquet is very interesting?" Amon finally broke the silence while standing at the corner of banquet room, with a full view of everything in front of him. "What gives you that impression?" Ocuses said, his brows raised. "It's just that everyone who here to the banquet." With a chuckle, Amon said, "They're desperately trying to hold on to who they were, fearful of losing their last bits of humanity, yet they are walking down a path that could turn them into anything but human, without hesitation or doubt. Humans are so contradictory and entertaining." He concluded in a light-hearted voice. Ocuses looked around the banquet, which was filled with demigods, saints, and even angels. Despite the fact that most of them were smiling, their eyes were indifferent. While the dances appeared to be perfect and unique, they lacked vibrancy. There were also those who did not bother to hide behind masks like others. "They're certainly contradictory." With a chuckle, Ocuses said, "However, there's more to them than it could ever meet your eye." He took a pause. "Let's not get into it. You could perhaps meet Diana after she finishes the dance. I could show you around until then if you want." "No, it's fine." Amon was considerate and ignored Oss's comment about him, and his expression finally changed. "Honesty, I wasn't expecting such hospitality from you when I decided to come and meet you. Do you expect the literal sun to shine on you?" Oss's said with a smile. "Only just about," Amon said, nodding. "You are far better to the other two. They don't even think twice before striking me at first sight. And even when I was a kid, I liked you as my teacher over the other two." "I can't say the same thing, though," Ocuses said, his smile widening. "Adam was much better." Amon's smile froze, but he quickly recovered his composure. "I never expected to hear that from you." Ocuses, Amon says, "You indeed have changed a lot." Amon continued after noticing his silence. "I was genuinely surprised when I learned about your plan. I must say, it is a fantastic plan. Trunsoist and Elitsa have succumbed completely to your calculations. With their betrayal, the rest of the nobles will soon follow, and the entire Solomon Empire will crumble when you and the other gods lay siege." He said this while adjusting his monocle and approaching him. "You should also be aware of the risky factors that exist within the Solomon Empire. Nonetheless, you sent your angel to the empire without hesitation, which had many kings of angels and 2 gods. Whether you truly didn't care about your angel and plans, or you were always aware that he would pique my interest from the start, considering those two live not far away from me? He was referring to the law of beyonder characteristics convergence, which is very strong between the three pathways of mysteries at this era. The plan was always bound to be revealed to me, and knowing my character, you wanted to involve me in this from the start to ensure its success. Amon still smiled, and he showed no resentment at being used. He watched Occus's expression with interest, but he was let down from his expectations. Occus's expression has now become indifferent. Wasn't that an excellent analysis? He clapped, but his tone was completely apathetic. But you missed something. I even knew you'd come here to confront me. Amon didn't show any panic at his words. As I thought, I already had a guess when I met you in the balcony. You really anticipated everything. He stood in front of Occus's, looking at the gods in different eyes with no fear or panic, and his smile didn't fade in the least. This is so different from who you were before, Occus's. Even though divinity and time can cause significant changes in a person. But your state reminded me of my zealot brother's change after our father died at your hands. Amon said. Occus's expression became amusing as he looked at the angel of time. He didn't seem to be moved by Amon's words in the least. I have to say, you're the most daring person I have ever seen. He chuckled. You're also far from reckless, despite appearances. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here facing me with just an avatar, as your true body is in the Solomon Empire, which is protected under authority of Solomon and Sasser. But you made an error, Amon. Occus's eyes became completely purple, which had not been visible to others until now. A vast and terrifying divine aura erupted from him, morphing into a purple eye without eyelashes above his figure. Amon's smile froze when he saw the purple eye. The Hermit. Chapter 38. Gungnir, you are stunning, Diana. Lucas smiled as he danced around the room, holding her hands and hip. However, I can't say the same. Diana mocked him, but her smile brightened as she kept up with Lucas perfectly. Ow! After hearing this, Lucas gave Diana a painful look that Diana thought was really phony. You really are something, aren't you? Diana whispered at his ear. You aren't even trying to hide? Lucas became serious. He was somewhat determined to seize this opportunity, but he was interrupted, and for a brief moment, Lucas didn't know how to feel. He had a strong suspicion that the goddess of doom was keeping an eye on him. She came to a halt in the middle of the dance, causing him to come to a halt as well. As she looked over the edge of the banquet, her expression was frozen. What happened? Lucas inquired, clutching her shoulder, having noticed her fearful expression. The music ceased. The guests turned to look at them, seeing the situation. It is him. He is here, along with the Lord. Diana's voice was slightly hoarse as horrible memories that she didn't want to recall flashed through her mind. Before Lucas could ask any more questions, a terrifying divine aura swept the entire banquet hall unrestrainedly. Everyone was frozen, some in complete terror and horror, while others couldn't take the repression and froze under the pressure. But they all had one thing in common. They all kept their heads down instinctively in their posture. Don't look, moron. Diana covered the eyes of Lucas, who could still move under this aura and was trying to see, as the divine aura didn't affect them that much. Despite the fact that the divine aura had no effect on the surroundings, their lord's authority was no longer restrained. Looking at their lord now, anyone below the rank of King of Angels will be instantly burned to ashes. Who exactly is he? Lucas finally asked with difficulty under the divine aura. It's the Angel of Time, or more accurately, him, the god of mischief. Diana's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. In the edge of banquet hall, I already have what I wanted him on. Occus spoke with a smirk while holding a brown book, which Blaze had obtained from Trunsoist. Everything is already in motion. The tide of times will soon sweep the Solomon Empire into history, ushering in a new era under my plans. Occus approached Amon, looking down and raising his right hand. He used the authority of knowledge, giving some of the knowledge he knew power. More importantly, it was the myths. A golden spear appeared in his hand. With just the appearance of a golden spear in his hand, a phantom of a tree with 9 galaxies formed behind the golden spear. Gungnir, the legendary spear. The phantom of the tree, however, was invisible to all under Ossus's control, concealing the identity of the spear and myth from the prying eyes. Amon was not in the mood to think about how the book ended up in the hands of the Occuses because the spear screamed danger to him. He had a feeling that if he was targeted by the golden spear, he wouldn't be able to escape at all. No amount of deceit or even time would be enough to save him. But, Amon, will you live to see the new era? While golden pure light fell on Amon's figure, melting him, Occuses asked with a smile. Let's find out, shall we? It's truly, despite his circumstances, Amon still wanted to speak up. Even if it was known to your true body, it's pointless. Occuses interrupted his attempts. The timing couldn't be better. So, consider this a declaration. He paused and looked at the direction of Solomon Empire. Then he continued with a grin. A declaration of war. Occuses threw the spear with all his might in the direction of the Solomon Empire. The spear immediately blazed in its path before disappearing from sight. In the night sky above the northern continent, a blazing shooting star appeared. The terrifying light that erupted from it left a trail of light that almost illuminated the sky in its paths. The stars in the night sky were completely dimmed by the illumination of light, and the sky was completely brightened, as if the sun itself had descended on the world. Gungnir descended from the sky with such force that it ripped apart everything in its path. The very northern continent began to tremble under the mighty force that had not yet descended, as various earthquakes erupted around. Gungnir finally made its way into the Solomon Empire, rupturing the very reality in its path. Boom, boom, boom. The distorted rules woven into the fabric of reality also broke with it. Even though the legendary spear was extremely powerful, it only affected what was in its path under the control of Ossuses, causing no collateral damage. Otherwise, the entire northern continent would have been destroyed by its mere descent. Ocus, Udare. A majestic voice rang out, echoing throughout the Solomon Empire. Immediately, a twisted world descended around the spear, attempting to contain the mighty spear itself. A majestic yet twisted city stood in the middle of the distorted world, where reality was completely black and white. Every building in the city was asymmetrical in design, and citizens wandered aimlessly through it. The most important thing was that there was a black sun in the middle of the sky. The golden spear trembled, as if enraged, and began emitting blazing light that immediately shone on the entire twisted world, dissolving all the distorted rules that were attempting to act on it. The spear buzzed as its power surged, and before Solomon could do anything else, the entire reality of twisted world shattered like shards of mirror, seemingly unable to bear the power of the spear anymore. The golden spear resumed its path to its target, seemingly unstoppable by anything in the world. Gungnir flew toward a range of mountains, where various Gothic castles was present along the mountain range. Amon stood on the mountain's edge, facing the golden spear that was coming for his life. His authority was completely useless against the spear. He had not anticipated the situation becoming so dire that his life was in danger. He knew he had no chance against the spear. Even fleeing wouldn't work because he felt the spear had locked him and would not let go until it took his life. He finally sighed and shouted, "Adam!" Immediately, a ring of pitch-black columns rose around him, forming an ancient cathedral that completely protected Amon within. It didn't stop there. A phantom of being nailed in an inverted cross appeared above the bone cathedral, followed by a black, sticky, and depraved ocean that encircled the cathedral. As the spear blazed towards the cathedral, the black ocean surged as waves filled with Degeneration's authority rushed towards the spear in an attempt to corrupt it. The spear buzzed again and continued unaffected through the black ocean. Then it slammed into the bone cathedral with all its might. Crack! A sound was heard all over the world, as various cracks appeared all over the bone cathedral, seemingly unable to withstand the power of the spear. However, a powerful force from the hangman's phantom descended onto the cathedral, causing the cracks to heal before the cathedral could collapse. Then there was a stalemate between the spear and the hanged man, as to whose power triumphed over the other. The spear continued to exert his power on the cathedral, but couldn't break it due to the hanged man. The power of the hanged man could not affect the spear. It could only keep the cathedral from collapsing. The spear, on the other hand, trembled violently before emitting a scorching light, in hopes breaking the deadlock. Boom! The golden spear exploded in a mass of light, expanding and disintegrating everything in its path like a dazzling sun. The surrounding mountain range instantly disintegrated as the light expanded. However, the space was distorted visibly around the entire place, in order to separate it from reality, thus prevent further destruction from spreading. The phantom of the hanged man also expanded and completely covered the bone cathedral within it. A black ocean manifested from the authority of degeneration appeared before the dazzling sun and completely covered the sun within. The sun brightened and melted the black ocean, but it also dimmed immediately afterwards beneath the black ocean's waves. The golden sun and the black ocean both disappeared after long fight, leaving only the ruins and Bone Cathedral. Chapter 39. End of the night in the Bone Cathedral. Adam stood up from his praying position and looked out the window. The distorted space, which appeared to be like a curtain, vanished, as did the phantom of the hanged man above. He turned to face Amon, who sat in one of the church chairs. The law of causality. Adam stated softly. There was such a law in the spear, even though he found some concealment on the spear, which prevented him from probing any further. Adam said nothing about it. With hermit uniqueness, Ocuses accomplished a lot. While walking towards the Amon, Adam said, even if an actual hermit ascends, his achievements may not be surpassed. He genuinely praised Ocuses. After everything that has happened, this comes as no surprise to me. After hearing his praise for Ocuses, Amon said, his demeanor had not changed, despite the fact that he was almost in the embrace of death. You are underestimating. Adam spoke softly. The gods. Amon stood up from his seat, ignoring his previous words, then asked, is Solomon coming for me? Yes. Adam nodded. Solomon had already noticed problems in his kingdom, but he couldn't pinpoint them. As a result, his suspicions were directed only at those who could keep them hidden from him. He's already convinced that it is you, given what happened now, and his knowledge of you and the gods. You never escaped the calculations of Ocuses. Amon. Adam said everything in a gentle tone. Amon sighed and moved his gaze to the cathedral's exit. Are you leaving? Despite his expectation, Adam inquired. Yes, at least until everything settles. Amon said this without turning to face him, despite the fact that I would have preferred to stay for the impending chaos. The six gods, on the other hand, would not be pleased about that. As for Solomon, the six gods will soon decide his fate. After noticing his brother's silence, Amon moved towards the entrance. Just when he was about to exit the cathedral, Adam's gentle voice was heard. This is the last time, Amon, I would assist you in this manner against him. Amon could sense the clear indifference in his gentle voice. My zealot brother, with him against you, your path and goals will be far from easy to achieve, as you previously imagined, Amon stated with a chuckle. Then, Amon left without waiting for his brother's response. Ilia's kingdom, northern continent as expected, muttered Ocuses apathetically. He knew he was going to miss his shot from the start. However, this was more of a declaration, as well as a move to expose Amon in front of Solomon. When it comes to dealing with Solomon and the true creator, as well as their army, which includes, most notably, Medici and Ouroboros, all of the gods and their forces will be required. Adding Amon to the mix would only make the situation more chaotic. Killing a god has never been easy. At the very least, this will force Amon to flee the Solomon Empire. But there's still one I haven't entirely considered yet. Ocuses reflected as he drank the wine. Bethel Abraham. Actually, there's a reason he left this king of angels out of his plans. Bethel's place in the empire is ambiguous. He didn't vow allegiance to either the true creator or Solomon. And, more crucially, Solomon could do nothing about it since Bethel, in his own right and power, could talk to a deity equally. Even most gods wouldn't be able to stop Bethel if he decided to flee during a chaotic conflict. Ocuses could only sigh at the conveyance of the door pathway. Bethel also has another lethal move at his disposal, teleporting his opponent to the cosmos, where the outer gods are present. This makes him a greater threat if he ever decides to support Solomon, to the point that even the gods themselves must personally besiege him. Ocuses massaged his temples, not that he hadn't thought about Bethel before. However, even he has restrictions to how much he can move in the Solomon Empire. Let's put the matter of Bethel on hold until the rest of them convenes. With a sigh, Ocuses pondered. Finally, Adam. He has no idea where Adam would stand in the midst of the coming chaos, but one thing is certain. It is not with Solomon. But, given who Adam is, he isn't going to risk anything. He would not hesitate to descend personally to face Adam if the situation became out of hand. Ocuses had a reasonable expectation that he would encounter Adam in the upcoming war, especially because of the grossal travels that he had assigned to Lucas to retrieve. He didn't forget about that book, for sure. If the book is what he thinks it is, he and Adam will have to confront each other at some point during the war. Ocuses drank all of the wine and put his mixed thoughts aside, and when he raised his hands, golden flames burst, forming a phoenix. Go! He let the phoenix fly to the sky from the balcony where he now stood. The phoenix spread its wings and started flying towards the kingdom of Ammonites. Ocuses eventually turned to face his angels, who stood silently in the balcony behind him. The banquet that was supposed to take place behind the door had already been taken, and everyone had already fled, leaving the entire hall behind the door forlorn and empty. After everything that had happened up to this point, there was only Diana and Lucas, who were both very nervous at the moment. Did Blaze wake up? The silence was finally broken by Ocuses. "My lord, no. He is still asleep and under your light. The worm of time in him has already been destroyed." Lucas was the first to speak up and informed of the situation. Ocuses didn't seem surprised when he nodded, because Blaze was an angel under his command. Amon didn't dare to steal his identity. He had only parasitized Blaze to meet with him. "The gods will gather in my kingdom soon," Ocuses stated. "Their angels will mostly be following them, so make sure everything is in order." Diana and Lucas nodded in agreement as they heard their lord, their nervousness diminishing meanwhile. They didn't dare to ask any questions after noticing their lord's mood and not wanting to upset him after everything that happened. Finally, get ready for war. His serene words reverberated through the air as his figure disintegrated into golden particles that dispersed in the breeze. The rising sun could be seen through the horizon, signaling the end of a historic night. Chapter 40. Their arrival northern continent. Alia's kingdom. A young boy with silver hair sat on a bench in the capital's now deserted streets. He was having relish with a dollop of ice cream from a glass cup. At the same time, the boy was enthralled, staring up at the sky. The sky was bright, not as bright as it had been with the sun, but it had a twilight tone to it. The sky was a mix of orange, red, and blue hues, mesmerizing yet deadly. For anyone who looked at it felt weakness emerge within them spontaneously, to the point where even moving their hands and legs beneath this sky would be difficult, until they withered away and returned to earth. However, no one except the boy was present to witness this dazzling spectacle, as the once prosperous city had been completely deserted except for some patrolling demigods and saints on the outskirts of the city, who did not dare to stare at the sky like the boy. The shops were completely closed, with signs stating that they would be closed for an indefinite period of time. The roads were desolate, with some empty or abandoned carriages parked on the side of the road. The streets, which were previously filled with cacophony of noises, were now completely silent. A newspaper with headlines written in large fonts was lying on the bench where the boy sat. The declaration of war. The kingdom of Alias declares war on the Solomon Empire. A state of emergency has been implemented in Alias Kingdom, as well as the other 5 kingdoms. The silver-haired boy finally put the ice cream down and murmured, his gaze still fixed on the twilight sky. "Gods always like to be grand, don't they, Diana?" "Will," a stern voice echoed, rather deafeningly, due to the silence around. "It's always a pleasure to hear your divine voice," Will Septon said, but his face was visibly cringing. A woman in blue traditional robes appeared not far from a bench, wearing golden-rimmed glasses over her deep purple eyes. Her mere presence made the air thicken and mysterious. "Diana, Angel of Wisdom." Diana ignored his remarks and opened a golden parchment. Then, she read the content.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.